13 Secrets School Did Not Teach You About How to Be Rich, 2020 edition. By Steve Courage. Section 1. The Scary Truth. This section discusses some hidden truths about school. I call it Scary Truth because most people live their life believing the opposite of what I'm about to discuss here. Chapter 1. School doesn't give education. Education is a private matter between the world of knowledge and experience, and has nothing to do with school or college. Lillian Smith. One day when I was a little boy of 13, I stood alone on the football pitch of my secondary school and asked myself, why is it that everyone is talking about job, and job? Whenever I got to school, our headmaster inspired us with stories of the people who were good students that now have good jobs. In the class, teachers taught us accounting, commerce, government, English, maths, etc., but they all ended with stories of how that knowledge could be used when we got jobs or how having good grades would help us to secure good jobs. When I got home and listened to my father and elder brothers talking, there's no difference. Whenever the subject of money and success is discussed, the only thing I heard my polygamous family talk about was the story of how someone was lucky to have gotten a job in a bank or an oil company. I went to church 3 to 5 times every week. When it was testimony time or Reverend Father was preaching, the luckiest people, the most favored and the happiest that the church seemed to believe, were those who had good jobs. Now at the age of 13, I felt that something was wrong. Why is everyone talking about jobs? I asked myself, why should I become an employee if I can become an entrepreneur? Why should I work for other people if I can work for myself? Because I was a little boy, the last child in a polygamous family of 10 children, I had no courage to ask my siblings any questions as regards my confusion. I kept my pains to myself and tried to be the best student in my class anyway. However, 2 years later, when I was around 15, I got 2,500 naira from my parents. I told them that I wanted to buy books. Instead, I bought a used bicycle, which I wanted to use for my bike renting business. That was how I started my first significant business at age 15. I had started about 2 or 3 enterprises before this time. One was selling corn, the other was packing sand to sell to those building houses. After school, I would take my bicycle to an open field where my mates would come to rent it. They paid me 5 naira for 5 minutes and 10 naira for 10 minutes. On weekends, I would go to the same field and make money for as many hours as possible. One weekend after closing the business of the day, I looked at my hand and saw something like 180 naira. At age 15, that looked like a lot of money to me, and for you to see it the way I did, 20 naira was the daily allowance I collected from my father at this period. So making in a day what my father would give me in 9 days made me feel that I was smart. At 16, I sold my bicycle for the same amount I bought it and used the proceeds to buy a photo camera. Again, selling my bike for the same amount, I bought it a year earlier, and after I had made a lot of money from it, made me feel that I was brilliant. My next business was photography. I had started learning photography from my stepbrother since I was 11 years old, so at 16, I decided to buy a photo camera. I would take my camera to school, and during the break or sports time, I took photos of my mates, juniors and seniors. Each photo cost about 18 to 20 naira to make, and I charged 50-60 naira per photo. I was making as much as 200% profit. Again, I was making a lot of money as a 16-year-old in a poor town. At age 19, I was already a student at the Asun State Polytechnic, IRE. I acquired my first stock. I thus became one of the shareholders of Eco Bank of Nigeria plc. All these years, I remained one of the best students in every school I attended. For example, I was the best commercial student in secondary school. I was the only student to ever get to a distinction, in my department at the Asun State Polytechnic, where I studied accounting in a 2-year diploma course. a program that cost me 3 years because I did pre-ND. But there was a problem, and that problem was, I couldn't get my mind off the question, why does every teacher teach me how to be an employee? Why is the entire school system teaching me to work for another person for the rest of my life? On June 30, 2008, I wrote my final national diploma exams at the Asan State Polytechnic, IRE. I announced to my family members that I would never again be in a school classroom listening to a lecturer teach me anything or even go back to my school to collect my diploma certificate. I was only 21 years and 6 months old. In the society where I grew up, and generally in my country, Nigeria, having a 2-year diploma is not considered an education. My elder brother and father already had plans for me. They planned that I would finish my diploma at the Polytechnic, then cross to a university, probably get a PhD and become a successful accountant. So when I announced to them how much I hated school, job, and certificates, all hell broke loose. For an apparent reason, the society believes that if you don't go to school, you can't have education or become successful. A lot of people waited for me to crash my life and become a useless member of society. Today, however, I'm one of the most influential citizens of my nation. Today, I'm the CEO of the 27th Century LLC, a company I built from scratch, which makes me millions of naira every month, as at the time of writing these words. I have tens of employees, yes, even though I preached against being an employee. More on this later, and I live a rich, prosperous, and free life. You'll like to ask me, Steve, why did you stop schooling? Why didn't you go to a university or even collect your diploma certificate from the Polytechnic? Well, I left school because I was, and still am, convinced that school does not give education. Or let me say, schools don't provide the right education, to be fair to the system. The hidden truth is that the present school system was not designed to give anyone education. It was designed to brainwash, castrate, and deceive you into being a slave of the rich through jobs. If you are reading this book and you're poor, it's because you've spent so many years in schools and got no relevant education about life and money. If today you're unemployed, it's not because you're stupid. It's because the school did not give you the right education. If today you work like a slave and never have enough money, well, that exactly is what school was designed to do for you, to teach you how to work hard for the industrialists, the entrepreneurs like me who make all the money. In this chapter and throughout this book, I'll prove to you, as against what you were made to believe, that school doesn't give education. The singular purpose of this book is to open your mind to the truth and reality about life in the 21st century so you can live a happy and prosperous life. Please note, some of the things I'll share with you in this book may be too difficult for you to accept, and some will seem outright stupid. Yes, some of my opinions may be wrong because they are based on my limited experience, so I would advise you to read this book the way you eat fish. Let the fish go into your stomach and the bones into the waste bin. Now let's get deep. The true meaning of education. One day after failing in the business world for about 4 to 5 years, my elder brother told me, "See, your niece is already in university. Continue wasting your life until she and the other children who were born not long ago become university graduates." As it was my habit, I looked at my brother and told him something he wouldn't like: they are in the university because they wanted the degree. I don't need a degree. Few years after I had that bitter argument with my brother, the said niece indeed graduated from one of the most expensive universities in Nigeria. Today, my niece is working as a teacher, earning less than 35,000 naira per month. As at the time of writing these words, 30% of my employees are earning between 100,000 to 210,000 naira, the amount you would hope to make if you work for a bank in my country. That my niece and millions of other smart people were trained to be slaves that earn pennies is, however, not my most significant pain. My biggest pain is that this 28-year-old lady, and others like her, may never know what it means to do what they love for a living because that's never in any school curriculum. Yes. The school might teach you how to become a good accountant. And you might even be luckier than my niece and get a good job in a big company. Still, oftentimes, usually after 3 to 6 months, you'll discover that you have no passion for the job you're doing. Having no passion for what you have to do 5 days per week is hell, and you're there because you were never given an education. Real education involves teaching children to discover who they are, their strengths, weaknesses, and life's mission. Real education consists of teaching a child to understand how never to separate life from work because both ought to be the same, both ought to be fun and exciting. The present prison we call school was designed to teach you how to be a laborer. Laborers have life, and they have work. Their work is Mondays through Fridays, and their life is only on weekends. This way, even the richest among laborers is still unhappy and unfulfilled. How can there be anything called education when this institution doesn't teach people how to be happy and fulfilled? Or, how can you be happy if you hate every day of your life because you have to wake up to resume at the work you hate? When the school doesn't teach you how to make money or how to be happy, what then does the school teach you? Yes, I know what school teaches you: how to work hard for someone like me, the entrepreneurs who build companies and make millions. Is that what you call education? Wait a minute. Let's take a moment to find out the meaning of the word education. This is crucial because, until we know the definition of a word, we can't understand its usage. Education is an English word which originated from the Latin words educare, educere, and educatum, which simply means to nourish, to draw out, and to bring out from within. Essentially, what education is supposed to do is to nourish your mind, help you discover who you are, and to bring out your strength for the benefit of humanity. In other words, graduating from the university should mean that I now have a sharp mind, now know, or have ideas, about who I am, what my strengths and potentials are, and how to make the world a better place. Having an education should mean that I'm now a leader of my life. Having real education should show that I'm now capable of making reasonable contributions to society. Having real education should mean that I can now use my knowledge, strengths, and potential to make the world a better place while I make money doing just what I love. If the above is true, I shouldn't be stranded, I shouldn't do the job I hate for 35 years or never have enough money. Then someone might be tempted to ask me, does that mean that everyone must be an entrepreneur? Steve, you sound as if you believe that everyone should be an entrepreneur. Are you saying that everyone should be trained to be an entrepreneur? I have been asked this question many times. I have the answer for you in this book. Keep reading as I'll soon answer this question. For now, let's check what the dictionary has to say about education. www.dictionary.com defines education as follows: the act or process of acquiring general knowledge, developing the powers of reasoning and judgment, and generally of preparing oneself. According to this definition, education is about knowledge, but not just that. Education is about developing the powers within your mind. Not just that. Education is about preparing for the future. Now I wish to ask you, do you think school prepared you for real life? Do you believe school prepared you, yesterday, for your today? If school prepares us for real life, why do we get out of school to be frustrated by poverty, unemployment, and jobs we hate? If school prepares children for the future and teaches them how to be employees, in the world where no jobs exist, isn't that stupid? How can schools claim to be giving education, preparing young ones for the future, and after brilliant and hard-working people spend 15 to 20 years in the classrooms, they still become poor, frustrated, and hopeless? If the school claims to be giving education, that is, preparing us for the future, and school teaches all of us to look for jobs that are nowhere to be found, does this make any sense to you? It is like your father calling you one Saturday morning and saying, "My son, there will be a civil war very soon in this country, and I want to prepare you for the battle." Then, Your father starts teaching you how to fight with arrows and swords, in the 21st century. Does this make any sense to you? Does it make sense to be trained on how to fight with swords in the 21st century? Yet, that's what our present school system is doing. Unfortunately, most people are still worshipping the stupid system called school. Listen. Knowing how to fight with arrows may be a great thing in the year 3000 BC. Knowing how to fight with swords might be a good thing in the year 2000 BC. Knowing how to fight with swords or arrows is useless in the 21st century. If you want to fight today, the least weapon you can learn how to use is a rifle. Being an employee in the last 70 years could be a good thing. Going to school to learn how to work for banks in the last 50 years is also a good idea. Schooling, thinking, or planning your future on jobs today is a foolish idea. Going to the university and having good grades is enough to give you a good life, or at least make you live comfortably, some 50 years ago, but not again. What was good is no more good. Why? Because life has changed. So, what changed? If we decide to believe what science teaches, for thousands, probably hundreds of thousands, of years, our ancestors were hunter-gatherers. Their children didn't have to learn anything in the classroom, they learned by practicing in the world, by observing and doing. More on this later. However, about 10,000 years ago, the human race discovered that we could plant and grow our foods. This era was called the agricultural revolution. Before this time, humans ate what nature grew since our ancestors were nomadic. But after we figured out that we could, in fact, plant and grow our foods, humans started staying in one place. This era, like every era, came with a lot of changes. One of them was that our forefathers began giving birth to a lot of children so they could use them to farm, since the bigger your farm, the richer you became. The other thing that changed with the agricultural revolution is the fact that humans now have status. Let me explain this. Before the advent of agriculture, humans were mostly the same because there weren't much differentiating factors between our nomadic forefathers. Now with agriculture came money, so if I could figure out how to have 1 acre of farmland, and you have only a plot, I would be richer than you, and since we now lived in towns, unlike our nomadic forefathers, I could use my money to become a king or a chief. This change led us to another turn, and that was child slavery. Since I have the biggest farm, I can convince others and their children to work for me so that I can pay them, and if they don't want to work for me, I can use my money and influence to force them. For this system to work, we had to change the kind of education we gave to children. For the first time, we started teaching children to be obedient, meaning, do whatever the adults want, to suppress their will, and to follow orders. This lasted for thousands of years before another era came, and that was the industrial era. Now we were in the middle of the 18th century, and we have started figuring out how to mass produce everything. We didn't need laborers for farms anymore, or not much of them, but we needed hundreds of thousands of them to work in the factory. Not until the previous century, 17th century, public schooling wasn't compulsory since most children got their education by observing the world, trying, and making mistakes, which is real education. Now that the industrialists needed thousands of laborers, the smart way to get that is to educate the masses to think that job is the best way to earn money and live a meaningful life. Fortunately for the industrialists, Christian church and government had been working hard to enforce public schooling, so what all industrialists had to do was to get into the game and influence the curriculum. Don't forget that both the Christian church and the government had their reason for promoting public schooling. For the Christian church, Martin Luther and others that lived after him, wanted to deliver people out of the hands of the Pope. Luther wanted people to know how to read so they could read the Bible and other books so that they could be enlightened and spiritual. The government at the other end of the game wanted an orderly society, a society where people are humble and obedient so that they could obey the law and do the biddings of the political elites. The best way to achieve this was to influence children long before they know how to think. Since we cannot stop people from thinking, let's teach them what to think, I heard them say. While the Christian Church was the first to promote public schooling, so that people can learn how to read the Bible, think, and know God, and the government sought to make citizens obedient by influencing them, neither of these two powers was as powerful as the industrialists. Because industrialists had a lot of money to control everybody, they had more power, and they used their power very intelligently. The industrialists financed, promoted, and influenced almost everything we call public education today, and that is for a single reason, to make you become an employee eventually so that you'll work hard to make the industrialists, entrepreneurs like me, rich. That system was good, or endurable, for the public until about 50 to 40 years ago. The world gradually moved away from the industrial age. Starting from the 1970s. By the end of 1980s, the world had entered another era called the era of information, automation, and technologies. Suddenly entrepreneurs began figuring out that they could use machines to do what humans were employed to do. One after another, people started losing their jobs, and new jobs were not available because computers, software, plugins, applications, and numerous other technologies could now do what men used to do. The era of jobs is officially over, but nobody knows what is going on. Instead of changing what we teach our children and young adults, we pray that they are lucky enough to get a job, even if they will hate that job for the rest of their lives. My continent, Africa, gives birth to more than 30 million children every year. All these children are destined for the same route. They would go to school for 20-something years and learn how to be employees. This is my question to you. If today's industries no longer need hundreds of thousands of laborers, because machines and technologies now do what men used to do, why does the school keep on training people to be laborers? If companies can now do with 20 employees, what they used to do with 100 employees, why do we keep on teaching all our kids to be employees? If the new economy needs people who can think, create, and invent change, why do we keep on training our children to be robots, the machine that obeys instructions? I may be wrong, but I have an opinion. 1 century ago, we needed hundreds of thousands of people to operate our companies and the economy, so it did make sense to teach our children how to be employees. Even if they were miserable all their lives doing what they hated, they at least would have jobs and some money. 100 years ago, our companies needed humans to do almost everything. Now, we have figured out how to make machines do 70% of the work, and we're still busy creating more devices and technologies to do our jobs. How does it make sense that we still teach every kid to be an employee? What the present school system is giving is not education. If it's education, it will prepare children for the future. If it's education, it will not teach every child to be a laborer. I call it deception. Some people have told me in the past that this is an African problem. I tell you, no, it's the world's problem. Schools in America or Europe may be good at making you a better laborer, but they still don't make you anything better than a laborer. Education ought not to make people laborers. Real education ought to teach people how to think, how to know who they are, what the world is, and how to contribute to the world's progress while making a living doing the fun things they were made to do. Real education ought to teach kids not how to work but how to live. Real education ought to teach kids how to be as happy on Monday as they are on Friday. When people are happy on Friday, they are dead. They are dead because they rejoice for getting out of prison, which is their offices, temporarily, until Monday when they will be sad again. What kind of life is that? I make more money in a single day, even on Sundays, than most people in Africa make in a month of hard labor, but that isn't my most significant success. My biggest achievement in life is the fact that I work almost every day of my life, including Sunday evening. How can working every day be termed as success? Well, I'm not a laborer. I don't have work and life separately. All I have is a life filled with fun. My happiest moment is when I sit down on my table to work because my work is as fun as a game. Unfortunately, 99.9% of the people in the world will never be able to know how to do what they immensely love and make a lot of money doing it simply because they were never trained on how to live. Instead, the school taught people how to work as laborers. Conclusion. Just as I asked myself when I was 13, I am asking you now, why should we teach every kid to be an employee? Why should we worship an institution that brainwashes everyone to love a job? Why should we teach young adults how to live in yesterday? Why should we teach millions of our citizens to look for jobs when every one of us knows that there's no job anywhere for them, yet we call that education? Think about these, and if after you think deeply about this, you conclude that I'm stupid, I respect your opinion. But if you think this book is starting to make sense to you, I beg you to do something for your country and the world by sending this book right now to everyone you know and love. Sharing this book to your friends is important because the more people we're able to convince to hate jobs, the more businesses we'll have, and the more successful companies we have, the better economy, jobs, and prosperity we'll all have. So, make a list of 10 people you love and get them to read this book today. It's easy to share this book and only takes about 3 minutes. Thanks. Let's continue with the book. Side note. If you want to have access to tens of my free video training and courses, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Chapter 2. How School Wasted Your Life Makes You Poor. The trouble with being educated is that it takes a long time, it uses up the better part of your life. Philip K. Dick. I got an admission into Asan State Polytechnic, IRE, on June 6, 2005. I was only 18 years and 6 months old. Even though I've spent my last 5 to 6 years obsessed about creating and selling things, at this time, the world had defeated me, or almost did. Instead of dreaming of becoming a successful entrepreneur as a young adult, I was dreaming of becoming a great accountant at this period. This wasn't my fault but that of society. We talk so much about good jobs that we kill the children who have the passion of building companies. My parents and family members, like that of most families, always talked about jobs, and as I am the youngest person in a large family, I didn't know how it happened, but by the time I got admission to the Polytechnic, my dream, unfortunately, changed. Now I wanted to be an accountant. I knew a man whose name is Dipo. He was the best student in the accounting department. I loved him, and I was determined to run after him and become like him. 2 years after I got admission to the Polytechnic, I was already like Mr. Dipo, or very close to his academic achievements. I became the best student in my class. I was a famous political leader. I was influential, and I loved the glory I received from being a genius. I was right on my way to becoming the central bank governor of my country, and I had already made Chukwuemeka Soludo, the then CBN governor, my model. All of this, however, changed one day when I started thinking about how much money I had calculated as a student accountant. It suddenly became clear to me that my lecturers, just as my secondary school teachers, were teaching me how to calculate millions for those who have it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to know how to calculate money. I only felt that someone like me should be trained on how to make money instead of how to calculate it for the rich. Again, why didn't school teach me how to make money? Why must I know how to calculate money, if I don't know how to make it? I became so worried that if I stayed too long in school, the school would affect my life negatively. I didn't just believe that school wasn't teaching me the right thing, I was afraid that school was wasting my time and would eventually destroy my life. Being the last child, I was the favorite of my father and the eye of my mother. Even though my parents were poor, they were willing to support my education till I become a PhD holder, even if they had to borrow money. But there I was, terribly afraid of the poison school was feeding me. I was so scared of staying any longer in school that I preferred to lose the relationships with those who loved me most, my family members, than to listen to them and remain under a school system that would have brainwashed me to love jobs. But this is not to say that school is absolutely horrible. No. School isn't downright evil. The 3 problems I have with school. My primary problem with school is that its foundation, to teach people how to be employees, is faulty and stupid. My second problem with school is that its methods are ineffective, so it takes too many years to learn simple things. My third problem is that school forces people to eat, instead of making them see how delicious foods are. School forces people to get an education, so they hate it and get nothing out of it. Let me explain the 3 problems. First, teaching every child how to be an employee. This makes me so furious that if the school were human, I would have loved to kill him and spend the rest of my life in prison than to allow him to continue doing this. Then someone will tell me, but people don't have to be employees. People can be anything else they want after the first degree. Okay, I hear you. How old were you when you finished university or polytechnic? Especially in developing countries, most people get their first degree at age 27, or 25 if you're lucky. Then these people will spend another 3 to 5 years in darkness. They believe everything school taught them. They would travel to popular cities in their countries to look for jobs. For example, if you're a Nigerian, you'll like to go to Lagos. Likewise, if you're a Kenyan, a South African, or an Egyptian, you'll go to one of the biggest cities in your country to look for a job. Then after tens or hundreds of job interviews, they may get a good job, after 2 years of searching. A dream come true for them. However, after 6 months of working at their new jobs, they will discover that the money they used to think was a lot, as students, was no money at all, so they begin to feel that they are underpaid. Adding to this is the ugly truth: they hate the fact that they have to wake up early in the morning to go to the job they love nothing about. They hate the traffic congestion that wastes 2-4 hours of their lives every day, and the fact that they have a boss who doesn't care a bit about them, who loves to be treated like an animal. Somehow these people will convince themselves to believe that they would get used to it, because everyone in the society seems to have gotten used to it. 2 and 3 years down the line, meaning 5 years after school, they are still not used to it. They still hate Monday's traffic and the fact that they have to go to work even if they have a headache or malaria. The reality sets in, and that is, they have started seeing that they may never get used to hell because hell is always hot. But there's another problem here, and that is age. These people are already 32 to 35. Some of them are married and have financial responsibilities. Some of these people might love entrepreneurship. Others might have some visions, dreams, and ideas that could change their lives but won't want to take risks or dare any uncertainties because, at 35, there's no single cell in their brains that is ready for failure. Well done, school. You've succeeded in destroying these people. You've wasted their lives, destinies, and hope. All they have left is 35 years of suffering and smiling because most of these people will feel too old to take risks or make terrible mistakes, the feeling they would never have at age 17 or 21 when school kept them in the safe world of school prison, when they should be in the real world trying different things, making mistakes, and failing. So, if you think people can become anything they want after school, think again, because school is going to keep these people in its prison when they ought to be making mistakes in the real world. By the time they will get to know this truth, for most of them, they'll feel too old to waste any time or make mistakes. Who are the greatest entrepreneurs in the world? John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, Thomas Edison, Steve Jobs, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Aliko Dangote. Do you know what unites these people? They all started pursuing their dreams when they were young. Rockefeller dropped out of elementary school at age 7 to start pursuing businesses and life. Warren Buffett began to sell Coca-Cola at age 6. At age 15, Andrew Carnegie was already making more money than most adults of his time. Aliko Dangote started selling sweets as a kid. At age 20, he was already running hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of businesses, in today's currency. Mark Zuckerberg was 19 years old when he created Facebook in February of 2004. Bill Gates started Microsoft in April of 1975 when he was 19. Steve Jobs was 21 in 1976 when he started Apple. I started my first major business at age 15. By the time I was 18, I had run 4 businesses of my own. At 21, I went fully into the business world. I was young and naive. I could try stupid things and smile when I fail. Ask a 35-year-old man to go and do what I did at 15 and see how he will look at you. I leave you to research other successful entrepreneurs, and you'll understand what I'm saying here. Who are the greatest athletes in the world? Tiger Woods started playing golf at less than 3 and professionally at 13. Lionel Messi started playing football at age 5 and professionally at 13. Cristiano Ronaldo started playing football at age 5, and at the age of 18, he had started playing professional football. Serena Williams began to play tennis at 3 and professionally by the time she was 14. Who are the most successful musicians in the world? We have the likes of Elvis Presley, Westlife Crew, Michael Jackson, Jay-Z, Sonny Ade, R. Kelly, etc. Who among these people started singing at age 35? So, if you think people can become anything they want after school, how are you ever going to become what you're supposed to become when you've wasted the years you ought to practice your skills in boring classrooms, finding X that's never going to be useful for your future? Again, my primary problem with school is that it destroys the lives of people who ought to build our world by keeping them in the classroom at the time they ought to be making mistakes in the real world. Steve Jobs said, "When people become 30, their thought patterns become rigid." Nikola Tesla said, "I don't know any man who invented something worthwhile after marriage." These quotes aren't to discourage people who are over 30 or married. It's just a simple fact that as we grow up, we become more careful, and care is the greatest enemy of success. Jesus Christ says, in Matthew 16:25, "He who keeps his life will lose it." People who protect themselves, who are extremely careful, who avoid every discomfort never achieve anything in life. So when school keeps people in its prison till they are 25 to 27, and make these people waste additional 3 to 5 years pursuing the wind of jobs before they realize the truth about life, what it does mostly is that it has consumed the years they ought to use to dare life, take risks and make mistakes. Being a successful entrepreneur, musician, scientist, athlete, artist, writer, or anything worthwhile for that matter requires that you have what I call decade of errors. That is, 5 to 10 years dedicated to vigorous actions, massive mistakes, ruthless movements, and mastery of how the world operates. The decade of errors is easier when you're young, anytime between 13 to 30. Unfortunately, most people in the world would waste those years before they know what it means. My number one problem with school, I repeat, is that it wastes people's lives by keeping them in its prison and making them pursue vanity years after school. By then, they've wasted all their decade of errors. Today, I have friends who hate their jobs like the devil. These people want to build their businesses, but they never get themselves to do it because they are no longer adventurous, as a 21-year-old would be. If these people have been able to get out of the classroom at age 19, they would have had enough zeal, passion, and silliness to dare their dreams. But, because they finished school at age 27, spent 2 years looking for a job and then hated their job after 1 year of having it, at 30 or 33, they are now married with several financial responsibilities, ego, and the sense of maturity, so they cannot take risks required to achieve their dreams. Then someone reading this book will tell me, school gives education, and anything worth doing is worth doing well, meaning, if the school gives education, spending 27 years on getting it isn't a bad thing, right? Well, I have some problems with this assumption, and that is the second problem I have with school. School is so silly that it wastes too much time teaching simple things, leading people to spend 3 years learning what they can learn in 6 months. Let's assume for a second that not everyone can be an entrepreneur, athlete, musician, artist, writer, scientist, etc. Let's assume that we genuinely need a school to teach some people how to be employees. Even with the above assumption, I'll still hate school because it still consumes too much of people's time using unscientific methods to teach them, therefore, wasting too much of their lives. Let me give you an example here. I loved accounting so much in secondary school. Because I was the favorite of my accounting teacher, and I loved the glory of being the best student, I always wanted to know every account in textbook. But there's this account I couldn't understand. It was called bank reconciliation statement, which is the account that settles the discrepancy between the business owner's records and that of the bank, created several years ago before the internet and technologies could check your bank statements. I struggled for years, but I didn't master this account until later when I grew up and understood how banking works. Then I realized that the reason I didn't understand the bank reconciliation statement then was because I have never been to a bank when my teacher was teaching me. What if the school system had allowed that we were taken to a bank hall to go and learn bank reconciliation? I bet I would have understood this account in 30 minutes. So, I wasted tens of hours trying to learn what I ought to learn in 30 minutes. This is a perfect example of how schools waste people's lives with boring classroom teachings. We spend too many hours in the classroom learning what we can learn in minutes if only we'll learn in the real world. So even if everything is right with what school is teaching, it still doesn't make sense to me that you want to teach me in 4 years what I can learn in 6 months. Why waste my life? Why? Wasting people's lives doesn't start from when you get to university. From day one when you're taken to school, your life will be spent in boring classrooms, until after 25 years that you'll get out of it. I have 2 children at the time of writing these words, a daughter who ought to have been in school and a 6-month-old. Most people who have met my daughter wonder why she's smarter than her age. While I understand that being smart has something to do with genetics, the grace of God, and other factors we might not know, I also understand something: I don't allow my daughter to learn in a traditional classroom. When I wanted to teach her what an umbrella is, I went to bring out an umbrella, got her to play with it, open it with me and make her sit inside it, and yes, she destroys things this way, but that's how anyone can learn. If I want to teach my children about the sun, I will take them out of the room to have a look at the sun. The other day when I wanted to teach my daughter about the river, I drove her down to the river. If I want to teach my children about the traffic light, it'd be stupid to do it in a classroom. I would take them to where the traffic lights are. This isn't because they are kids. It's just the best and fastest way humans learn. As at the time of writing these words, I have 2 friends who are studying law in Nigerian universities. I think they are both at 300 level or one is at 400 level, that is, 3 and 4 years in the universities respectively. All the years these people have spent in the university were spent in classrooms. I don't know why everybody wouldn't see this as stupid. If I were to design an educational system that will train a child to be a lawyer, this is how it will look. We'll do whatever we can to make primary and secondary education very practical, very few classrooms, 90% hands-on, so that a child can get out of secondary school at age 13. This child will spend the next 1 year, not in the university, but in the courtrooms, observing how lawyers speak and defend their clients, watching how lawyers verbally and tactically attack their opponents as they try to convince the judge, and also, seeing how judges rule. As this child observes court cases, let him have an adult by his side who can help him to research information to clarify anything that's not clear to him, or will attach him to an experienced lawyer whom he can call once a week. After spending a year or 2 observing court cases and the dramas that happen in the court, we'll then take this child to the back of the door, to see what happens before the court. We'll let the child spend the next 2 years with an experienced lawyer, seeing how court cases are prepared, how clients discuss with lawyers, how lawyers look for shreds of evidence and make a winning case. Now, we'll take this child to a university, no, not to go and sit down in a boring classroom, but to continue what he has started. I believe no subject is worth sitting down in the classroom for more than once a week. If you're in university studying medicine, you should spending 90% of your time in the hospital with experienced doctors and 10% in the classroom. If you're studying civil engineering, you should be spending 90% of your time outside the classroom, at the construction site, where new roads and high skyscrapers are being constructed, right where it's happening. I don't mean to say that we don't need a teacher, and yes, I think we don't need teachers. Instead, we need guidance to make us see, do, and make mistakes, because it's by doing and making mistakes that the human brain learns, not by sitting down in a classroom. So many people disagree with some of my opinions, and I think I might be wrong sometimes, but let me ask you, is it better to teach our kids about traffic lights in the classroom or on the road where the traffic lights are functioning? Is it better, more comfortable, or faster to teach our kids about the moon in the classroom or to take them out on a moonlit night? Is it better to learn how to be a lawyer in the university classrooms than to spend most of those time in the law courts and with experienced lawyers? I honestly think that school wastes too much of our lives trying to teach us in 3 years what we can learn better in 6 months. But if you disagree with my opinion, let me ask you this: how did you learn how to drive? If you know how to ride a bicycle, how did you learn how to ride the bike? How did you learn how to talk, write, or walk? You'll agree with me that nobody can, honestly, learn how to drive a car in the classroom. If at all anyone wants to learn how to be a good driver in the classroom, then he/she will spend 1 year learning and know so much about driving, yet he won't be able to drive. So, how can we teach people to drive well within a short time? Simple. Let's take them to an open field, have an experienced driver by their side who'll show them a few things and get them to drive. Yes, these people will make a lot of mistakes or even hit something. But we can get them to drive a car on the road in less than 3 weeks of training, while taking them to the classroom would have cost us 1 year, and still, they will learn nothing meaningful. The classroom is boring. Nobody likes it. But the school says it's the only way she knows how to teach, and that's why it wastes our lives, since we learn nothing in the classroom. Doing and making mistakes is the only way the human brain learns. That was how our ancestors taught their children. They made them observe, do, and make mistakes. You didn't learn how to speak in the classroom. You spoke, made thousands of errors, and improved. You didn't learn how to walk in the school. You simply tried to walk, fell, and tried again until you perfected your steps. You can't learn how to cook in the classroom. You have to be in the kitchen, make mistakes, and improve. So if we can't learn how to walk, talk, eat, cook, or drive in a classroom, why do we have a school system where children are imprisoned in the classrooms, and everyone thinks this is normal? The classroom, my friend, is the reason why we spend too much time in school. Almost everything we spend 3 hours learning in school can be learned in 30 minutes or an hour if only we make learning practical. Making learning practical will not only make learning faster. It will make learning fun and produce smarter children and adults. But you see, the present school system wasn't created to make you smart. It was designed primarily to make you a machine, a robot which is programmed to do stuff, an employee who is ordered around by wealthy entrepreneurs like me. Then to another question: if you say all learning should be practical, what about reading books to learn what we might not easily see, or to have a basic understanding of what we want to experience, like reading about the sun, before going to see the sun? That leads me to the third problem I have with school: forcing people to eat delicious meals. All my life, I've never met a single human being who loves school. Some, like me, can do well in school while others struggle, but everyone hates going to that prison. But why? Why should people hate school? Does school honestly give education? Well, I've told you that school doesn't provide the right education, plus, children and young adults simply cannot understand why it makes sense to sit down and learn what they cannot see practically. Ask any mathematics teacher, and they will tell you that 90% of their students are stupid. But no. It's the school that's stupid, because that 10-year-old girl simply cannot understand why she should find X, and if she finds X, Of what use will X be to her future? School should be a gate man, not god of education. Another reason why school is annoying is that the school is programmed to feed you, not to teach you how to eat. This is silly, as no parent wants to do it for their kids. Education is so vital to human growth, achievement, and progress that no one should educate you. It's like food. Children are taught how to eat and left all by themselves to eat for the rest of their lives. The primary task of school and parents isn't supposed to be to educate children. It's supposed to be to make children love education. You should enjoy learning so much that having a degree or PhD shouldn't mean the end of your reading. You should love learning so much that there should never be a single day of your life when you don't have a book you're reading. You should enjoy learning so much that you're willing to delete your social media accounts if they don't allow you time to read. Unfortunately, this isn't the case in our society. Most adults don't love learning because school gave them unpalatable experiences about learning by making learning seems like tedious work. If school makes learning practical and hands-on, the time we spend in school will not only be shorter, children will love learning and have a lot of fun. These people will not go to school to get decorated paper called a degree, they will go to learn, and even after graduating from school, they will forever be a learner, which is what truly educated people do. Most people go to school to get certificates, and after that, they read no book again except they have another exam. Yet, these people deceive themselves by calling themselves an educated fellow. My challenge to you: don't call yourself educated just because you attended a university. You're not educated because a paper says so. You're an educated person because you know yourself, the world around you, and how to fit into that world. You're not educated because you spent 17 years in the classroom, you're only educated if you continue learning and taking actions to practice what you learn. Real education involves self-learning, willingness to act, and make mistakes. I read tens of books every year. I have more than 70 new books in my library as I write these words, and buy books almost every month even though I don't have any school examinations coming. The last time I needed to write an exam or test was when I was 21, so I'm not reading because I want a degree. I'm reading because I want to know what most people don't know so that I can do what most people aren't doing and achieve what most people can't. Most people only read when they are in school, for tests and exams. They are illiterates, and will be poor, regardless of how proud they are about the decorated papers the school gives them. Carl Rogers said, "The only person who is educated is the one who has learned how to learn." The school makes people poor by promising to educate them. Schools should not be a god of education, instead, it should be a gate man of it. School should be a place where we learn how to learn, not a place where we get an education because nobody can educate you. The only education you'll ever have is the education you give yourself. Isaac Asimov said, "Self-education is, I firmly believe, the only kind of education there is." If you're a 25 years old man and you've not read 50 books outside what the school asks you to read, I have no respect for you. If you're a 40 years old woman and have not read 100 books outside what the school forced you to read, I don't even want to speak with you. If you're 50 years old and you don't have a library of 200 books that are not for school, you're not only an illiterate, I wish you don't have a child because you're not fit to raise, truly, educated adults. I go to people's homes and see big television sets. They have a room where their children sit down in front of the screen, day after day, but there's no room in their home where the children go to learn what the school doesn't teach. That should be regarded as a crime, yes, a felony. No adult deserves to have a TV if they don't have a library of 100 books. No adult should have the right to spend 2 hours in front of the TV or social media if they won't spend 1 hour reading or learning something they cannot learn in school. Education can never be given. We can force people to school, even to read, but we can't force people to be educated. Because school is about forcing people to read, most graduates are illiterates and will end their lives in poverty. Conclusion. We are shut up in schools and colleges and recitations rooms, for 10 or 15 years, and come out at last with a bag of wind, a memory of words, and do not know a thing. Ralph Emerson. I have just 3 arguments in this chapter. First, school kills people who ought to build our world by keeping them in the classroom for too long. Because building a business, inventing a thing or becoming anything worthwhile requires what I call a decade of error, most people are incapable of going through those years of trying and making mistakes after school, since their youth had been wasted in the classroom. Secondly, I argue that even if you think school deserves to waste 25 years of our lives because it gives us education, it's stupid to learn things in the classroom. You don't have to be a scientist to understand that. You know how you learn to walk, talk, write, drive or cook. If you learned how to walk, talk, ride a bicycle or drive a car by doing and making mistakes in the real world, why do you think any human can learn anything by sitting down in a classroom? My third argument is that school is not supposed to be a place where people get education because education is a lifelong endeavor. School is supposed to be a place where people are taught how to get education. School is not supposed to be the god of education but its gateman because education is a lifelong thing. If you don't die in the library, you've probably not lived at all, so you need all your life to be truly educated. School, however, makes people believe that because they have a degree, they are educated. This pride then leads them to become illiterates. Above are the reasons why I believe that school wastes too much of people's lives. The above truth is what I've known for a long time, after years of asking questions and studying, and that is the truth that set me free and changed my life. Today I'm a millionaire and can keep this truth to myself, just as most entrepreneurs do, but we need to have a better society, and that's why I didn't just take the pain to write this book, I also make the sacrifice to give it out for free. What then can you do to repay me for this kindness? Give to other people what I have given to you. It's that simple. Just as this book has been given to you for free, share it generously with other people too, so that we can have a better society, a society where people seek true education, build businesses, and make their countries prosperous. Make a list of 10 people you love, your friends, family, children, colleagues, etc., and share the book with them right now. Ask them to read it now because they might forget about it if they don't read it immediately. What do you gain if you share this book? You gain exactly what I gain, the joy of opening someone's eyes, the joy of causing someone to change their lives, the pleasure of being the reason why some people hate jobs, build successful businesses that provide jobs and make our world a better place. The joy of hearing someone telling you in a few years to come, I'm a happy and successful person today because you shared that book with me years ago. It's easy to share this and it only takes about 3 minutes. Thanks. Let's continue with the book. Side note. If you want to have access to tens of my free video training and courses, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Chapter 3. How Technologies Make School Outdated. At the beginning of the 19th century, 1804 precisely, the entire world's population was just 1 billion. In the year 1927, 123 years after, the world's population was only 2 billion. We had many industries and very few technologies or automation systems. What does this mean? First, jobs are much more than people. Secondly, human beings did more than 90% of the jobs, because we had only a few technologies or automation systems. That was the reason employers would be begging our forefathers for jobs. That was the reason a school system that teaches people to be employees was popular in the first place. If the school educated you 50 years ago, or earlier, you'll have a job, often a good job that would be able to pay your bills. Yes, you might not be happy or have the fulfillment you ought to have with your job, but you'll be okay financially. Now, things have changed. By October 2011, it was estimated that the world's population had grown beyond 7 billion, 7 times of the 1804's population. We're now close to 8 billion, and by the year 2050, will be around 10 billion. Listen. The massive population in the world would not have been a significant problem. Instead, the greatest challenge now is that, new technologies come up every day that are doing men's jobs. The more the technologies do what men used to do, the fewer people entrepreneurs like me will need to run our companies, and the more jobless people we'll have in the world. That's why I'm bold to say that our present school system is outdated. I simply cannot understand why nobody is as angry as I am. My country alone produces about 2 million people who need jobs every year. It's not only that there's no new job being created, but the available jobs are going away as entrepreneurs are always on the lookout to automate tasks. If indeed we have an educational system anyone can trust, such a system should be updated every 5 years or every decade to fit into the reality of the world we're living. The reality of the 19th and 20th centuries when the present system became popular was that many factories needed a lot of workers. That reality isn't the same today. Today, there are too many people and very few jobs, and we're busy creating more technologies to take away even more jobs. If what we worship as an educational institute cannot be updated to meet the current reality of the world, why do we think it is giving any education at all? I mean, take a look at the car we drove in the year the 1920s. 1924 Chrysler Model B70. And take a look at the cars we drive today. 2019 Lexus ES. Take a look at how homes millions of people lived in the 1930s looked. And look at the homes we live in today. Take a look at the phone we used in the 1950s. And compare that with your phone today. Almost everything around us is being updated except the most critical thing, the education we give our children. How stupid is that? If you cannot ride the car of the 1980s today, why would you believe in a school system that offers education, which only made sense till the 1980s? John Taylor Gatto, who worked in American schools for more than 30 years, said, "The truth is that schools don't really teach anything except how to obey orders." That is, the school didn't teach you anything except how to be a good employee. Nonsense. If everything school teaches is how to obey orders, then the school is only good at teaching people how to be slaves to the rich. Unfortunately, the rich are now building companies using the power of technologies and automation, meaning that even if you're willing to live the rest of your life following orders, machines are currently being built to replace you. I cry for the common man. Listen to this. In the 1990s, if you needed to withdraw money in most African countries, you were required to enter the banking hall. Banking halls would be filled with customers who needed to cash their savings. Due to this, the banking sector was then the biggest employer of labor as banks employed hundreds of thousands of graduates. Suddenly, automated teller machines, ATMs, found their way into Africa, and as this technology entered Africa, what happened? Many bankers cried home. Banks, and other companies, needed to cut costs, reduce expenses, and maximize profit for their shareholders, don't you know? If you're the owner of a company, would you employ 50 people to do what you can purchase a machine to do? Since the computer doesn't ask for salary and mostly doesn't get tired, example ATMs can work 20 hours a day, it is always the right business decision to lay off staff, if any technology has been invented that could do what 10 or more human beings are doing. Some time ago, I was reading some things from the website of EcoBank, a bank that I am one of its shareholders, which has branches in over 35 countries. I read the total numbers of their staff, and I had to read again. Why? Because the number of their total employees, for 35 countries, appeared to be what in the past would have been the staff for just Nigeria branches of the bank alone. If I am correct, the bank now employs the number of staff they would need in a single country for 35 countries. Why? Because several technologies now do the work that men used to do. Machines, artificial intelligence, computer automation are the real employees of the 21st century. The work of humans is to think, create, and make change happen. Unfortunately, the school is still teaching people how to do the tasks we already have machines do. What do you think about that? I read something interesting some time ago. It goes thus. In the next world, the only thing we will need for our industries will be machines, a dog, and a human being. The work of the dog will be to keep the man from touching the machine. The work of the man will be to give food to the dog, while the machine will be the true employee. 20th century companies vs today's companies. Today I run a company with about 3 different businesses. If the same company were to be run just 30 years ago, I probably would need 5,000 people to run the company. Today, however, we use technologies, software, plugins, blogs, websites, social media, artificial intelligence, and telecommunication technologies to do over 90% of the job humans ought to do. If you think I should hire people because I love them, I wonder how you came up with that assumption. Look around you and notice how banks are promoting their internet and mobile banking apps. In fact, at the entrance of a Nigerian bank is a statement that reads, "Why enter here when you can do your banking on your phone?" Banks are discouraging customers from going inside the banking halls, it's too expensive for them. Banks want you to use their internet and mobile banking apps so that they would have few employees to pay every month. I do not blame them. I will do the same if I own a bank tomorrow. It doesn't make sense to employ human beings for what you can use machines or any other technology to do, because technologies work smarter and don't ask for a salary. I use the banking industry extensively in this chapter because that is what is very easy for all of us to see. The nature of jobs has changed everywhere and in every sector. You think about the transportation industry. In the 90s, if you were living in Lagos, Accra, Nairobi, or anywhere in Africa, far from your family, and you either give birth, build a house or graduate from school, you would have to travel home, because there wasn't landline telecommunication in most of Africa, to tell your parents and family members. This helped the transport industry to boom. If your mother also wanted to tell you that your 79-year-old uncle is dead, she would have to travel to see and inform you. Then, the transport business was a big deal because everyone traveled for everything. Suddenly, a new era of affordable telecommunication arrived. Technologies changed the way we behave, and the transportation business for that matter had to lay off thousands of transport workers. Think about it. You now communicate, cheaply, with anybody anywhere in the world. If you give birth today, you'll only have to call your mother. If anything happens at home now, they may just send you an SMS. If you miss any of your sisters or friends now, must you travel to see them? You only need to get to Facebook, WhatsApp, or Twitter. In the past, people traveled for almost everything. Now, we travel only for essential things. This has led to less business for the transportation industry. This means fewer workers in that sector, which also means an increase in the unemployment rate. In the past, you would need a whole lot of workers to work on your farm, if you were a farmer. Now, we have many machines, tractors, and chemicals to do more in less time with fewer people. What happens to your employees? You'll have to send many of them home, with no apologies. In the past, you needed some specially treated genius to maintain your business website. You treat these guys like gods since they operate with HTML, CSS, and many programming languages you don't understand. Now, even dumb people can build a website in 30 minutes. What happens to thousands who ate from building websites? Many of them lost their jobs. You know Uber, don't you? That's a company that is worth over $50 billion as of 2017. If it were in the 20th century, such a company would have hundreds of thousands of employees, and their employees would be the most valuable asset they have. While employees are still valuable today, Uber doesn't have hundreds of thousands of employees. In fact, as of 2017, Uber has just 12,000 employees. A company that is worth $50 billion in the 19th century may have 100,000 employees, but, in the 21st century, a company that is worth $50 billion had only 12,000 employees because companies can now run 70 to 90% of their businesses with technologies. As of September 30, 2017, Facebook had just 23,165 employees. This is a company that is worth over $500 billion as of the year 2017. A company that's worth $500 billion in the 19th century could employ more than 700,000 people. Today, a company that is worth $500 billion, Facebook, employ just 23,165 people because companies now use technologies to run 70 to 90% of their businesses. Alibaba generated $23.82 billion in the year 2017. This company is the richest in China. Can you guess how many employees Alibaba has? As of 2017, Alibaba had only 50,092 employees. A company that generated $23 billion in annual revenue in 1900 may have 400,000 employees. Today, a company that makes $23.82 in revenue in a year had just 50,092 employees because today's companies now use technology to do 70 to 90% of their jobs. The question I want all of us to answer is, if we don't need many people to do jobs anymore and we now use technology to run our businesses, why do we keep on teaching our children how to be employees? I can go on and on to show you how our world has changed with various technologies. While these technologies are here to help us, they are as well here to take away our jobs. This would never have been an issue if we had an excellent school system that can quickly amend to cope with emerging threats. Every business is cutting costs, embracing technologies, and laying off staff. We all know this. Everybody is aware of this. But I keep on asking myself, why does the school keep teaching children how to get good jobs when bad jobs are, even scarce? This always makes me angry. If school were a human being, I would have loved to sue him for a criminal offense or even kill him so that the world and our children may have a real education. The kind of education school was built to give has now become outdated. The real educational system should be dynamic. The right educational system should teach people how to live in tomorrow, not how to live in yesterday. The current school system is programmed to train you on how to live in yesterday, and I don't know how that makes sense to anyone. To be successful, you have to understand where the world is going and acquire skills to make you relevant in such a world. The American billionaire Mark Cuban said, "For the past decade, I've always asked myself, where is the world going, and how can I be there first? How do you learn to live and succeed in the future?" As I wrote earlier, I have more than 70 new books in my library at any given time. I buy and read good books all the time. My goal is to read one book every week, and even though I often don't meet that goal, I always have something I'm reading at any point or day of my life. I've read books about how companies are built, the biographies of great people, history, self-development, leadership, psychology, and a few fictions. Reading books is like sitting with a wise sage. You'll know what most people don't and have an insight into where the world is going and what to do to take advantage of the future. Because I read and try things a lot, I know how the world operates and have an idea of where the world is going. This gives me a great advantage as I can get to the future before most people, take advantage of emerging opportunities and become rich in the process. Today, I'm not the richest man in Africa, but I've built businesses that give me more money than I need, even if I only work an hour per week, and listen to this, I'm just 34 years old. So what else can I do with my life? I can decide to work harder, to make more money. I can dream of becoming a billionaire or even the richest man in Africa, but of what value will that money be when I die? Instead of working hard to acquire more wealth for myself, which I cannot take to heaven when I die, I've decided to work hard to teach other people how to be rich and happy, so that in my grave, I'll be pleased that I make my continent, Africa, a little better than how I met it. And that's why I started the African Business University, ABU, in the year 2017. What we do at the African Business University is very simple. We teach you how to build a successful business from scratch. The good thing about the ABU is that I don't plan to make a profit out of it. To join the ABU, you have two options: you can pay for school fees or get a scholarship. If you pay for school fees, you're giving me money, and I'll joyfully use your money to fuel my car or buy toys for my kids. If you join the scholarship scheme, you don't have to pay for school fees. Chapter 4. How School Killed You Long Before You Started Living. In the year 2012, after spending about 4 years struggling and failing in the business world, I decided to take some rest in my hometown, Iri, Osun State. While doing this, I met Mr. AUDIOBOOK, who owns a private primary school. We became friends, and in one of those days, he was talking about his need to hire a headmaster for his school since he would be leaving for Ibadan. Since I was at the period of rest from the business world and Mr. AUDIOBOOK won't ask me for a certificate which I don't have, I decided to take his job offer as the headmaster of his school. My job as the headmaster was to make sure that everything goes on well in the school. However, there was a time when one of our teachers left, so I had to become a teacher for the primary 3, or so, of the school. Like every other class in every school, the class I was teaching had a few geniuses, a lot of average students, and some who were regarded as dullards. Among the dullards in my class was a boy whose name my memory cannot recall now, so I'll call him Joseph. It took forever for Joseph to understand anything, and it will be a miracle if he ever scored C in any subject. However, one day as I was in the class, my eyes gazed at Joseph's table, and I noticed a notebook beside him. I suspected that notebook to have content, which was different from the subject we've just taught in the class, so I went to investigate. What I saw surprised me. Joseph was drawing in his notebooks. This wasn't one random drawing or two. Joseph is an addicted artist who probably draws even when teachers are teaching him English or mathematics. Joseph wasn't just an amateur artist. For his age and environment, he had the potential to become a great, wealthy, and successful artist, designer, or an architect. But, unfortunately, Joseph is not likely to ever become successful in life. The reason is straightforward. The school will eventually kill him. Yeah, Joseph would have probably been murdered by school by the time you're reading this book, so you can observe a minute of silence to mourn him. Most of you reading this book have been killed by the school long ago, even before you know it, so you might have to mourn yourself too before you look for how to resurrect yourself. So how does school kill people? Very simple, by creating a single criterion and wanting to force every creature of God into that criterion. Then, anyone who is unfortunate to be designed differently must be killed for us to maintain sanity in our stupid schools. When mathematics and English are the most critical subjects in school, and any kid who doesn't know them is regarded as a dullard when biology is said to be more important than dance or chemistry more than sports, the potential of any child who is unfortunate to be created different must be killed off, for us to have our way. That's what we do with school. Albert Einstein said, "Everyone is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid." Joseph, in my above story, is a genius. Still, the school makes him believe that he is stupid, so he, like billions of people all over the world, would think that they are silly. This would destroy their self-esteem and kill their creativity, and when your self-esteem and creativity are damaged, your life is ruined. Some of you reading this book loved to draw as a child. Some of you loved music. Some of you loved sport, dance, or writing. Some of you loved business and entrepreneurship, but school and society judged you by what you were not made to be. You were created by God to swim, but you were judged all your childhood by your ability to fly, and when you failed at flying, school and society called you stupid. Since you were only a kid, you believed that you were truly stupid. Because as a human, you cannot live in a world except you fit into its values, you dropped painting, stopped singing, dancing, or volleyball. You stopped writing or threw away your little business to concentrate on mathematics, English, and biology just to please the school and society. Needless to say, a bird can never swim as good as a fish, so trying to swim as a bird is the easiest way to fail in life, and that's why most people in our world today are miserable and unhappy. They are like birds, but the school had taken away their feathers, so the only thing they could do is to struggle in the waters of life without any success or fulfillment. What makes me so angry about this is the fact that what I am talking about is too simple, so simple that one will expect that every adult understands it. You see, I have 2 children at the time of writing this book. Both of them are different. It only took about 2 to 3 weeks after we had our second child for me to see that our 2 children are going to be entirely different beings. My father had 10 living children. I don't know any 2 of us that are the same. If you have 100 children, no 2 of them will be the same, and this is not what I made up. Science had discovered this centuries before I was born. For example, in 2015, a study was published in a journal, Nature, that found that there are about 88 million possible variations in human DNA, so even if the world's population hits 100 billion, we won't still find 2 individuals who are the same. You agree with that, right? Okay, if humans are different, why do we attempt to make them the same? Why do we teach children the same subjects, the same way, at the same time, and destroy whoever doesn't fit into our definition of intelligence? Types of intelligence. In the year 1983, an American developmental psychologist, Howard Gardner, published his findings on intelligence. According to Howard, there are 9 different types of intelligence. 1. Naturalist intelligence, being nature smart, understanding living things and reading nature, example, geologists, animal trainers, horticulturists, marine biologists, etc. 2. Musical intelligence, being music smart, discerning sound, their pitch, tone, rhythm, and timbre, example, musicians, dancers, music teachers, songwriters, etc. 3. Logical mathematical intelligence, being number/reasoning smart, quantifying things, making hypotheses and proving them, example auditors, accountants, mathematicians, scientists, etc. 4. Existential intelligence, being life smart, tackling the questions of why we live and why we die, example pastors, meditation instructors, psychics, public speakers, philosophers, etc. 5. Interpersonal intelligence, being people smart, sensing people's feelings and motives, example nurses, life coaches, customer service representatives, mental health counselors, entrepreneurs, etc. 6. Bodily kinesthetic, being body smart, coordinating your mind with your body, example actors, physical therapists, artistic painters, surgeons, athletes, etc. 7. Linguistic intelligence, being language smart, finding the right words to express what you mean, example writers, journalists, proofreaders, lawyers, talk show hosts, etc. 8. Intrapersonal intelligence, being self-smart, understanding yourself, what you feel and what you want, example psychologists, therapists, counselors, etc. 9. Spatial intelligence, being picture smart, visualizing the world in ways others can't, example designers, photographers, drawing artists, physicists and astronomers, some engineers, etc. All you need to become successful in life is to excel in 2 of the above intelligence, but there's a problem, and that is the kind of intelligence school chooses to reward. Some of the issues we have in the world today emanated from the fact that the entire school system was built around logical mathematical intelligence and linguistic intelligence. Joseph, my student as mentioned above, unfortunately has spatial intelligence and any other intelligence that I wasn't able to figure out in the short time I spent with him. Nothing was wrong with Joseph. He was smart and intelligent. He could grow up to become a wealthy and successful artist, photographer, or fashion designer. He could end up designing the best-selling clothes. Joseph could end up giving the world great artistic drawings that will make him millions of dollars. Still, because he didn't have logical mathematical intelligence and linguistic intelligence, the school called him a dullard. This should be a criminal offense, but who can I sue? I mean, how stupid is it to judge a monkey for its inability to swim? How ridiculous is it to judge a lion for its inability to climb trees? How crazy is it to judge a fish for its inability to live on trees? School judges you for what you are not, instead of helping you to become the best in who you are, and that is why most people are poor. Because you're a fish and were judged for not being able to climb a tree, you thought swimming was not valuable. You then dropped the idea of practicing how to swim. 1 decade later, you've even forgotten how to swim, but there you are, unhappy about your struggles and still trying to climb a tree. Many poor and unhappy adults are people who have been killed for 1 decade or 2 ago. Today, they are engineers, but they were made to be musicians. Today they are bankers, but they were made to be athletes. Today they are doctors, but they were made to be drawing artists. School, I tell you, is a murderer. If you're lucky to be among 5 to 10% of people who happen to have logical mathematical intelligence and linguistic intelligence, then the school is your friend because you have precisely what the school rewards. Those who are lucky to have the perfect combination of the two intelligence school rewards are blessed. These are usually the best students in the school, these are often the top 5% of the class. These people aren't smart. They are just lucky to come into this world with the intelligence school was stupidly programmed to reward. For other people with a different intelligence, for the rest of the world, maybe 90% or more, you're a square peg in a round hole, an outcast, unfit, rebel, and unwanted. Teachers are going to criticize you, your parents will worry and cry about your lousy performance in school, the society will tell you that you're good for nothing, and you will eventually be destroyed. The way out. If you're more than 30 years old as you read this book, then you might want to cry. It's fine. You can cry. But you also need to stop crying as fast as you can, and try to repair your life. Unfortunately, some things in life expires, and an excellent example of that is someone born with bodily kinesthetic intelligence, who is supposed to become like the likes of J.J. Okocha, Nwankwo Kanu, Lionel Messi, Serena Williams, Tiger Woods, or Anthony Joshua, who is now 33. Well, no magic in the world can help such a man to become who he was created to be, because at 33, you can never again work hard enough to become any of the above individuals. But if such a man discovers himself, he can become a coach, a trainer, or anything similar. Think about your childhood passion. Think about who you were before school killed you. Think about your first love and be determined to reunite yourself with your first wife that the school forced you to divorce. For parents reading this book, I beg you in the name of God Almighty. I am crying as I type these words. Yeah, this is 5:54 a.m., April 15, 2020, and I'm literally crying in my Lagos home office. I'm not crying because of you. Your children and my children matter much more than I or you, and they are the ones I'm crying for. I'm sad, angry, and a furious man who mourns the death of millions of children that we kill every day. I wish you didn't have the blood of your child in your hands. I hope you don't partner with the school to kill your kids. I wish you wouldn't judge the fish you gave birth to because she couldn't fly. I wish you stopped judging the lions in your home for not being able to climb a tree. With great pain and tears, I write you these words. Work hard to discover who your child is and help him/her to be just that. Note, this chapter is inconclusive. You'll see the concluding part of the chapter later in the book. But before then, think about millions of people all over the world who are like Joseph. Think about millions who ought to have been rich and happy fishes but who are now poor and miserable adults because we have killed them by our attempt to make them birds. Even more painful are the young ones who are just starting life, who ought to be the future of our world. What would it mean if you can help a few of these people to regain their lives? Yes, you can do that, and you can do it at no cost. Simply share this book to as many people as you can, even to strangers. After all, you are a stranger to me, and I'm generous enough to give this book out for free so it can get to you. If you're so stingy that you don't want to give this to 100 people, then make a list of 10 people you truly love and get them to read this book today. Thanks. Let's continue with the book. Side note: if you want to have access to tens of my free video training and courses, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Chapter 5. Job security is a myth. I received a call from one gentleman in the year 2017. He was working in a bank but didn't like his job. He wanted to start a business, but he was afraid of what his wife would say if he resigned. After I dropped his call, I told the people around me, "Look at this coward. He's afraid of what his wife would say if he resigns from his job. What happens if he's sacked?" About 2 weeks after, this man called me back. The bank asked us to go home. He said yes. He was sacked. Each time I hear people talking about job security, I wonder what they are talking about. Then, someone reading this book will tell me, it's the private sector that fires people like that. The government doesn't fire people. You're right. When I was growing up as a young adult, I noticed that most people in my country preferred to have federal government jobs. My earlier assumption was that this was so because the federal government has money and pays well. However, I later discovered that in fact, the federal governments do not have money or pay its employees as much as successful companies do. But, your job is secured with the federal government, as the government, for political reasons, hardly fires people, so people pursue federal government jobs simply because of the security it promises. But again, there's a problem here: the government is broke, especially in Africa. My country, Nigeria, has 36 states, but only about 15 of those states pay salaries and pensions as at when due. My state, at some point, was paying half salaries. So, my question to you is, what is job security? Many people love to be employees because of job security, and this seems to make sense if you think about it. Starting a business is like going to war. You don't have any assurance of coming back alive, so why trying? I wasted the first 8 years of my life making mistakes and failing in the business world. Yes. 8 long and dreary years. Why would anyone do that if you can get a job that takes care of your family and get paid every month? Obvious versus unknown. There was once a criminal who was sent to the king for the punishment of an offense he committed. The king told him he had a choice of 2 punishments. He could either be hung by a rope or accept what's behind the big, dark, scary, mysterious iron door. Like most other criminals, he chose to die on the rope. However, just as this man was to be executed, he asked the king, "By the way, what is behind the dark, scary door?" The king laughed and said, "Freedom, but most people are so afraid of the unknown that they choose death instead of freedom." Today I see people living their lives in fear of the unknown, just like this criminal. Getting a job is easy. It's predictable and safe too. If I can read or cheat to get a certificate and I have some luck to get a job in a big company, then I can be sure to receive a credit alert every month. That's visible, simple, and predictable, and that's why most people choose that part. The other side is dark, scary, and mysterious. On July 24, 2008, when I went fully into the business world, no human being could predict 5% of what would happen to me in the following years, not even I had any idea. It was dark, scary, and mysterious. I lost my first business within a week, and I was to spend the following 8 years in the wilderness. Everyone who loved me worried about me. I suspect my mother must have cried many nights. My father showed his love through anger while my only brother displayed his love by threatening me. I was lonely, felt rejected, and disheartened, but 8 years after, I had my first breakthrough in the business world. My second breakthrough followed very quickly, I think about 10 months after the first, and my third breakthrough also came pretty quickly. I started making millions of naira and suddenly became richer than 99% of people in the world. Now, here is the thing, like that criminal, you have two options in life. You can choose the easy, obvious, famous, and known path that leads to an average and miserable life, or choose the dark, scary, unknown way which is difficult, can destroy you, but can also make you a hero forever. If I had to live my life again, I'd choose the unknown, the dark, and the scary path. Not because I'm strong or overpowering, I tell you, I'm not, but because freedom, for me, is more valuable than security or even life. The heroism that a warrior gets, to me, is more important than the peace a civilian gets. I'd rather lose my life trying to achieve something worthwhile than to live till 100 years as an average, miserable human. I'm telling you the truth. Almost every single person I know who is a retired employee is broke. If you're 19 or 27 as you read this book, you might not understand what it means to be broke at 65, so let me paint some pictures for you. At 65, you probably would have one major health issue you're dealing with. At 65, some of your best friends might have died. Those that are alive would probably be as broke as you are, so they won't have time to socialize with you, so you're lonely. At 65, your doctor probably would tell you 3 things you should stop eating, just hope those aren't your best meals. At 65, you might have a million dreams, but you know you're limited, so you can't dare many things as you wish. So many other things come with being old that I may not understand, but you get the picture? Old age comes with challenges you don't know about when you're young. Now, being broke at this critical moment is like adding fuel to the fire. Yet, that's the destiny of most people in the world simply because they live their lives choosing the visible rope instead of the scary, dark, and mysterious door. Helen Keller said, "Life is either a daring adventure or nothing. Security does not exist in nature. Avoiding risk, danger is no safer in the long run than exposure." After failing in the business world for about 5 years, someone told me, "That person is my only brother, he was like my father, now I'm warning you. If you go ahead and destroy your life, don't ever come back to me for help." While I understood that there's a possibility that I may destroy my life trying to build a business, I also realized that my life would be destroyed anyway if I want to live off a job. So it's like, would I choose the dark, scary, and mysterious door which might lead me to death or great freedom, or choose the obvious rope which is death? Then, like biblical Easter, I told myself, if I perish, I perish. Conclusion. Benjamin Franklin said, "Those who surrender freedom for security will not have, nor do they deserve, either one." If you keep your head safe, trying to avoid mistakes, pains, or the unknown, you'll never get either the security you seek or the wealth you hope for. That's why I spent so much time at the African Business University, ABU, to show my students how to overcome their fear of failure, because until you overcome your fear of failure and dare something worthwhile, you can never live a happy, rich, and fulfilling life. Like this book you're reading, African Business University is not designed to make me profit. By the grace of Jesus, I already have successful businesses which make me more money than I need, so we have 2 schemes at ABU, paid scheme and scholarship. If you join the paid scheme, your money is coming to my bank account, and I'll use it to feed the fishes in my aquarium or buy a dog for my son. If you join the scholarship scheme, you're not paying the school fees. Register for the African Business University and don't forget to share this book with your friends. Section 2. Solution to your problems. This section shows you how you can become rich and even make your country prosperous. Chapter 6. Join the 3%. One day when I was around age 18 to 19, I was walking alone in the street of my little town, Iri, Asun State. Then I started thinking about the problems of Africa and the reasons why most people want to run away from the continent. I told myself, unemployment is one of the biggest problems in the continent. If that's true, then I will never contribute to that problem. Instead, I will figure out how to solve a part of that problem. I decided that I will never look for a job or expect the government or any employer to hire me. Instead, I'll be a solution to the problem. I was only a young adult without any money or much insight. I didn't know how this would be achieved. Still, I was determined never to contribute to the problem of unemployment in my country. If anything, I wanted to be a part of the solution. Today, I don't just have tens of people working for my businesses, I pay them more than they can get elsewhere and give them freedom almost no other employer can give them. If you've read this book from the beginning to this point, the question you might be asking is, can everyone be an entrepreneur? Or should we train everyone to be an entrepreneur? My answer to that question is, no. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur, and we shouldn't encourage or attempt to teach everyone to be an entrepreneur because not everyone has the temperament, genetic makeup, or even interest in being an entrepreneur. But there's a problem, and here it is, entrepreneurs are like soldiers. You don't need the whole country to be soldiers. But if nobody is in the army, you won't have a country because your enemy will invade and destroy you in days. We can't teach every adult to be entrepreneurs, but if we don't have enough entrepreneurs, we won't have jobs, and that's my major problem with school. School teaches every kid to be an employee, so these kids grow up with the false hope of getting good jobs instead of being our hope by creating those jobs. When I ask people who they think should create the jobs, they either tell me, the government or someone will do it. Those two answers are stupid. They are dumb because the government is the worst institution to build a business, and business is the only way massive jobs could be created. How many successful companies do you know a government owns? None. The only way the government knows how to build a business is by enforcing a monopoly, and this is silly and eventually fails. If the government can't build businesses, how are they supposed to create massive jobs? To the second answer, I often get someone will do it, but who? If we hope someone becomes a soldier, nobody will become a soldier. For a country to have a proper army, there must be a conscious effort towards recruiting, training and inspiring young people to fight for their country. For us to have enough entrepreneurs who will build successful businesses that will employ millions of our citizens, we can't ever leave that to fate or chance. There has to be a conscious effort, recruitments, and training for children and young adults with the potential to be entrepreneurs. Then, someone else will say, but the United States and other countries of the world who have millions of entrepreneurs don't have any conscious educational system that trains them. Yes, except that the informal educational sector in most of the Western countries is as strong, sometimes stronger, than a formal school. This is what I mean. Mentors and teachers who share their experiences and inspire young people to follow their paths are as influential in most advanced countries as schools, so people do have the education to be who they want to be. I have in my library the biographies of Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Thomas Edison, John D. Rockefeller, Phil Knight, and several other books written by American millionaires and entrepreneurs. Thousands of successful American entrepreneurs are out there speaking, teaching, and inspiring the young Americans. That, I tell you, has more influence on the future of the people than a formal school. Then come to Africa. I only know a single Africa billionaire who teaches and inspires other people. Most African successful entrepreneurs simply keep to themselves, and this is a problem because the next generation doesn't have mentors or any written document they can learn from. But I don't blame these successful Africans. I blame our culture instead because our culture hates the rich. If you're rich in Africa, it's because you're evil or a thief, and who in the world wants to listen to an evil person? Before I leave this section, I'd like to challenge every successful individual in Africa to think about the everlasting gifts we can all give to the next generation, and that's our stories, our experiences, and our inspirations. If you've done something worthwhile with your life as an African, I challenge you to share your experience with the next generation. Make videos, write books, teach and inspire the young ones. This is how we can build the 3% who will develop our continent. My concept of 3%. For some people who think I speak against having a job, which I did, here is what I wish to speak against: teaching every kid to be an employee. The school was created to manufacture employees, and to me, that's stupid, because if we teach all our kids to love job, who create the jobs? What makes this even more painful to me is that we only need a tiny percentage of our citizens to provide the jobs for the rest of us, yet we're not giving the education and inspiration these few people need. For us as a continent, all we need to create enough jobs is to figure out how to make 3%, just 3%, of our citizens end up being successful entrepreneurs. For example, the United States is a country of 330 million people. Today every African child wants to go and live in the US because they would have jobs there, but do you know there are just a few people who created those jobs? Well, according to data from the Census Bureau's annual survey of entrepreneurs, there were 5.6 million employers, businesses that hire at least one person, in the United States as of 2016. As of January of 2020, there are 205 million working age people between 15 to 64, in the United States. What this means is that the US needs only 5.6 million employers to employ 205 million working age in her country. In other words, 2.5% of the citizens of the United States create jobs for the rest of the working population. Adding to this fact is something exciting and encouraging for me, and that is, a whopping 89% of these businesses hire less than 20 people. So here is the math: 80% of the jobs created in the US were created by only 1 million businesses, just a million entrepreneurs. Discovering this makes me glad and sad at the same time. I'm happy because we don't need everyone in Africa to be an entrepreneur before we can provide all the jobs we need for our citizens. We only need 3% of our children and adults to end up as entrepreneurs. If you tell me that getting 3 out of 100 people to be entrepreneurs is impossible, I'll let you know that that precisely is what makes me sad. People who think Africans can't solve Africa's problems are the ones who make me sad. How can we get 3% of Africans to build successful businesses that can hire the rest of Africans? First, we have to start with the adults, yes, you and everyone reading this book. We have to teach, inspire, and encourage every adult of all ages who has a deep sense of entrepreneurship passion to go for their dream. We have to encourage, teach, and inspire these people to choose the dark, scary, and mysterious door of entrepreneurship instead of the easy path that everyone wants. In doing this, we'll have to make these people understand what they are getting into. We'll have to be honest with them and show them what it means to build a business from scratch. It's hell. It's difficult. It's scary, and you can even crash your life in the process. But, if you are willing to pay the price, you'll experience in your short life what 99% of humans can never experience: the joy of providing jobs for other humans, the joy of creating profitable products or services that help people, the pleasure of having more money than you need, and the joy of having the freedom to do whatever you like without the fear of a boss. The above is the price and the prize of entrepreneurship. The price is costly, but the reward is also unbelievably grand. Every adult who thinks he has what it takes should focus on the prize so they will be able to pay the price. Then for children, parents are by far the essential tool here. If you're a parent, don't be deceived by the society which brainwashes everyone to think that if your child doesn't have a degree, he's not going to amount to much in life. The truth is that if your child doesn't become who God created him to be, he may please you by having all the degrees in the world, but he will live the rest of his life as a miserable human. My parents, like most others, would have been happy if I went to a university and got a degree and a job. But I would never be happy, except I'm who I am today. As a parent, your primary duty isn't to check your child's school performance, even though that is important. Your primary responsibility is to check your child's life's performance, and what I mean by that is, his passion, interest, and desires. If any child shows interest in entrepreneurship at age 10, I don't know why anyone would want such a child to get a university degree, which will never help him in anything other than to get a job. Teaching a child who was destined to create jobs on how to be an employee is what I call brainwashing. My family members told me several years ago, get a degree before you start a business, meaning, at least, if you fail, you'll have something to fall back on, Plan B. The problem with our society is Plan B, the security. Unfortunately, real entrepreneurs don't need the protection Plan B promises. I never needed security. All I needed was freedom, just freedom. If life cannot give me the freedom I desire, I want death. It's pretty simple. You can't tell real entrepreneurs to create Plan B because he never wanted Plan B. Plan B belongs to the cowards, and entrepreneurs, by nature, are warriors. Conclusion. Africans should wake up. Africans should stop being cowards. Africans should learn how to pursue worthwhile dreams, even if it's likely to lead to death. If your goal is valuable, your death is going to be worth it. Young and old Africans who have the passion of becoming entrepreneurs should be taught, encouraged, and inspired to go for their dreams, even though it's difficult and risky, and that's why I created the African Business University, ABU. I want to teach, inspire, and challenge a few Africans to choose the dark, scary, and mysterious path. I know that is where freedom for our continent lies. If we can inspire just 3% of our citizens to pay the price required to build successful companies that serve the world, we'll not only make these people extremely rich, we'll create millions of jobs and have a better economy, and that's what makes me love entrepreneurship like my eyes. As a successful entrepreneur, you're not only rich, you make your nation rich because you pay taxes and employ other people. Who in the world wouldn't want to be proud of that? Wait. Don't be evil. If you've read this from the beginning and you're still reading, this is obviously because you consider it of great value, and since you got this book for free, why would you ever keep to yourself what someone else gave to you freely? So, stop reading and take some time to share this with other people. If you're so stingy that you don't want to share this book with strangers, would you be that evil by not sharing it with your friends, family, and colleagues at work or church members? Make a list of 10 people you love most and get them to read this book today. All you need is a few minutes, and that can change someone's life. Thanks. Let's continue with the book. Note, the rest of this book is going to address some general concerns, obstacles you might perceive, and a few strategies I think can help you be among the 3% that will provide jobs for the rest of Africans. Side note. If you want to have access to tens of my free video training and courses, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Chapter 7. Choose Death So You Can Live. On the 24th of July, 2008, when I ventured fully into the business world, my goal was to spend 10 years making mistakes, if need be. The thought of luck, ease, or miracle wasn't in my mind. The only idea I had was of war, failures, mistakes, rejections, and probably depression. I wasn't expecting my journey to be comfortable, so when people pitied me for suffering, I pitied them for lack of vision. Here is the thing, our society is filled with millions of people who have no vision. Because these people have no vision, they are not capable of making risky or difficult decisions. If you live all your life, making easy decisions, you will end up having a difficult life. Jerzy Gregorek said, easy choices, hard life. Hard choices, easy life. But why are people so weak? Why do we have so many adults who seem to be strong in the face but weak in the spirit? Why do we have millions of people who cannot stand up for their dreams and sacrifice everything for it? I tell you, from the beginning, it was not so. Humans were created to be strong-willed, determined, and restless. It was when the human race slept that the enemies planted weakness into his mind by using the instrument of public schooling. In the book of Genesis, chapter 11, we found the account of how our ancestors, without any modern technologies, were determined to build a tower that reaches heaven. God looked down and saw that these guys would do what they have set their minds on, no matter what, except if they cannot understand each other. He scattered their languages, and that became the only reason they couldn't build the tower that reached heaven. God didn't tell us that we can travel on water. We figured it out because we are stubborn and positively crazy. God didn't tell us that we can fly in the sky. We figured it out because we are dreamers who won't relent except death stops us. God didn't tell us that we can speak to one another from a different country by using a simple device. We spent decades trying to figure it out, and we didn't stop until we did it. God didn't tell us that we can use our blood samples to test for diseases and create thousands of medical procedures and drugs to cure them. We figured all that out after sacrificing millions of hours, our peace, and even our lives. So, humans are not weak at all. School and society make people weak by systematically programming them for an easy life. For every day of the 17 years I spent in school, what I heard my teachers say was, "You won't have any problem as long as you study hard, get good grades because you can easily get a good job and get someone else to pay you for the rest of your life." The messages in most churches and mosques are not different either. You would hear lines like, "God loves you so much that he doesn't want you to suffer, suffering is not for the children of God, it's your enemy that makes your business fail." Please give me a break. The most successful people in the Bible, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, David, Abraham, Paul, had the worst lives. Joseph was sold to slavery and spent 13 long years as a slave and a prisoner. Jacob was cheated by his brother, and even though God confessed that he loved him, at age 130, he said, "My years have been few and difficult." Moses started his life with a crisis as he was abandoned to die in the water. He spent his youth fighting against the people he was known to be part of and suffered unbelievable pains leading stubborn people for 40 years. David spent years alone in the bush in child labor taking care of sheep. Fighting Goliath wasn't a joke, and spending many years in the wilderness running away from Saul who wanted to kill him wasn't what you could pray for. Abraham left his father's home to suffer in the desert. Building his $1 million cattle business wasn't a joke, but God refused to give him Isaac until he was 100 years old. Paul said, "I suffer more than everyone," and John the Baptist lived all his life in the wilderness, eating only 1 or 2 foods. How do the above accounts of the most influential biblical characters resemble ease, pleasure, or miracle? So, where do religious leaders get the idea that if anyone's life isn't easy, it's because his stepmother is a witch? Where does the school get the idea that we can raise great adults by teaching our children to be soft? Embracing the unknown. In the previous chapter of this book where I shared the story of my student, Joseph, one important question you're likely to ask is, if you want to encourage Joseph to draw instead of struggling with mathematics, how is he ever going to make a living drawing? Or if I allow my child to face the sport that she loves, how can we be sure that she will even become like Serena Williams? If I allow my child to face his music, how sure am I that he will even make it in music? The above questions could be for your children or you, depending on what stage you are in life. I want to answer those questions. Which is the reason I promised to continue what we were discussing in that chapter. You see, the school is good at making you feel that you'll have an easy life. If a 13-year-old child scores A in chemistry, B in biology, A in physics and further maths, we can smile or even celebrate because there we have tomorrow's doctor. If you are the best debater, always scoring A's in literature, history, and English, now we are sure you'll have a regular career as a lawyer or a journalist, and you might never be hungry. But if you have the best voice, draw the best images or love to sell things, how can you be sure that you'll succeed in the future as an artist, musician, or an entrepreneur? If we can't be confident in your future success, why should we support you? This is the reason why talents and potentials are killed in school. Being who God created you to become requires daring the unknown. Greatness requires jumping without any assurance that you will land well. In the year 1972, when Steve Jobs dropped out of school, he had no idea what was ahead of him. He had no map and no guarantee of any nature. Steve spent many years discovering himself. He dreamed of becoming a Hindu priest, traveled to India, and tried other things before he ended up with an Apple computer. 12 years ago, when I ventured fully into the business world, I had no assurance, no certainty, no promise, and no trusted map. The only thing I had was faith in the unknown future, confidence in my ability, as a human, to figure things out. Such faith will make your life difficult. You will make mistakes and crash. Roads will be blocked for you, and to add to your pains, nobody will support you. That is the fate every great man suffered without any exception. Unfortunately, school is designed to make you think there's an easy way out, just get a job, and someone else will take care of you forever. Africans must learn how to dare life. We must wake up from hope and dreams of an easy life. We must learn to choose death and not life. We must learn to accept crises and not peace. We must learn to dare danger and not tranquility. Peace, joy, pleasure are not gifts of life, they are gifts of war, crisis, and danger. The most peaceful people are those who had fought and won battles. The most joyful people are those who have gone through more sorrows than others. The richest are those who had risked being poor. John F. Kennedy said, "For us to have peace, we must prepare for war." One soldier client once told me what their motto in the army was: "For peace to reign, blood must flow." If you make easy decisions, you will end up having a difficult life. If you make a difficult decision, you'll end up having a comfortable life. There's a channel on YouTube. It's called DP Art Drawing. A New Zealand lady owns this channel, and the only thing she does is to draw. The last time I checked this channel, it had more than 500,000 subscribers and over 88 million views. I own a successful YouTube channel, Success Secrets TV, and I can tell you how much this lady is likely to be making every month, probably #1-2 million, 2 million naira, every month. Yes. This lady does nothing but draws for the world to see. She loves what she's doing and can even do it for free, but she makes millions of naira doing it. Conclusion. Think of my student Joseph. The school and society condemned him for not knowing mathematics. Does the lady who owns DP Art Drawing have to know math to be happy or prosperous? Does she have to understand biology or English? No. She only has to know how to draw, and that is natural for her. There are millions of people all over the world who are wealthy and successful by merely working on their innate intelligence. Lionel Messi doesn't know math, Serena Williams doesn't know biology, Michael Jackson doesn't know geography, and thousands who are wealthy and successful, even though they don't fit into the stupid category of intelligence as school defines it. But there is one thing all of these people have in common: they dared life, made difficult decisions, and jumped to the unknown. Today, I make more money than almost everybody I've ever met. I'm writing these words at the time of the coronavirus crisis. Today is the 15th of April, 2020. Millions of people have lost their jobs all over the world. Billions of people are broke because the whole world is locked down inside their homes, but by the grace of God, I've made millions of naira in the last 1 month alone. If I were to spend the money I made last 90 days alone, and do not work or make no money from my businesses that run themselves, it will take me about 4 years to finish the money. As if that is not enough, even as the whole world is crying and gasping for their breath, I continue making millions of naira every month. This was only possible because I chose death when everyone chose life. This was only possible because I chose a crisis when everyone wanted tranquility. This was only possible because I chose to dare the unknown by following my dreams while everyone else chose the ease and peace that schools and jobs promised them. Jesus Christ said in the book of John 12:24, "Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone, but if it dies, it bringeth forth much fruit. It's spiritual, physical, and natural law that anything or anybody who wants to multiply must, first of all, die. Africa needs to, urgently, raise people who are willing to die. We need to raise warriors who would face their fears, go through a million failures and overcome unbelievable obstacles until they build internationally successful companies. This is our only hope if ever we'll have a future for the next generations of Africans. If you think you have what it takes to build a company, stop making excuses. Be determined to fight with all of your might till you win. To make this journey a little easier, find an experienced entrepreneur who can teach and inspire you. If you trust me, you can join the African Business University, ABU, scholarship scheme or subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you don't trust me, then look around for other people who are successful entrepreneurs and get them to share their experiences and wisdom with you. Chapter 8. How to Make Money with 100 Hands. Sometime around the year 2018, I received a call from a Nigerian 50-something-year-old man who lives in the United States. During our conversation, he told me, "Steve, I've been in the US for over 20 years, and I'm still living from hand to mouth." This was not surprising to me. According to a survey released by CareerBuilder, 78% of US workers are living from paycheck to paycheck. If you live in Africa, there's no way you'll believe this because arguably, the United States is the wealthiest and most prosperous country in the world. So, why are so many people broke, even in the most affluent land ever known to man? I know the answer to that question, and that is, it doesn't matter how rich your country or the company you work for or how good your job is, as long as you earn income solely with your two hands, you cannot be rich, and that's why it is challenging for employees to be wealthy. How many millionaires do you know who are employees? Get me right here. I don't mean to say that you need to become a millionaire to be happy. No. You don't need $5 million to be happy, but you need enough money to take care of your needs, comfortably, and you need freedom, freedom to do what you love and freedom to live the way you want, which is very difficult if you earn all your livelihood with your two hands. So, what exactly do I mean by making money with 100 hands? As at the time of writing these words, my company has 3 businesses. We have about 250 partners all over Nigeria and tens of employees. My wife and I own the company 100%, no external body has any share, though the company has a single interest-based creditor. Now, this is what happens, tens of people wake up every day to work for me while hundreds of associates are there to be at our service anytime we need them. How can you expect me to be poor when tens of people wake up to work for me? By far, the easiest way to know how rich anyone is by knowing how many people wake up to do their bidding. The richest man in the world at the time of writing this book is Jeff Bezos of Amazon. His company has 935,400 employees as of 2020. That's almost a million human beings waking up every day to think about his business and make him money. That's like 2 million hands and like 80 million hours of service per week to him. The richest man in Africa at the time of writing these words is Aliko Dangote. His company has more than 30,000 employees. Mark Zuckerberg is the 3rd richest man in the world at the time of publishing this book. Well, that is because 48,268 people, as at 2020, wake up every day to serve him via Facebook. Sam Walton was one of the richest men, and now his family is one of the wealthiest families the world has ever seen. Well, that's because the family has whopping 2 million people waking up every day to work for them via Walmart. All my life, I've never seen a poor man who has 10 people working for him, never. Look around you and see poor people. One thing becomes obvious immediately, they labor with their two hands. Steve, you hate employees. Some time ago, a woman on Facebook placed a curse on people who are working for me. She thought, why would anyone work for me when it's apparent that I hate employees? Ouch. Do I hate employees? I don't think so. Instead, I believe God sent me to 3% of people who have the potential to build businesses that employ others, so if you're one of those, you may like me. But, if you think you're going to be a better individual as an employee, I don't see how I or any entrepreneur is better than you, because happiness is the only goal that matters. Then someone will say, but Steve, you just said now that nobody could be rich using his two hands, meaning that nobody could be rich as an employee. Well, a few things will be misunderstood in this book, and this might be one of them. Yes, it's challenging for employees to have a lot of money, until they become scarce, either from the economic improvement of a nation or by personal development. This is what I mean: as long as 300 people in Africa are fighting for a job, employers will forever underpay people. It's not because employers are evil. It's a natural law of supply and demand. So what can we do here? Ironically, the best way to make employees richer is to train more and more people on how to build businesses, because the more businesses we create, the more jobs we'll have. The more jobs we have, the less competition we'll have for each job, and the more employers will be willing to pay their employees. Now you see how much I love employees. If I can work hard to make 3% of Africans start profitable businesses in my lifetime, then I can reduce the number of people who need jobs. When the demand for a job reduces, employers will pay more and more, and everyone would be happier. The second way you can make yourself scarce as an employee is to invest heavily in personal development. Here is the truth I have to tell you as someone who employs people every time: the best jobs have very few candidates. The positions I'm willing to pay a lot for in my company usually don't have many people who are qualified for it, because though many people went to university, most of them are average. If you're serious about being among the top 1% most qualified in your field, and when I say qualified, I don't mean school qualification, with some luck, you might end up having a well-paying job. But even with the two possibilities above, you can still be rich. Sad news, I know. Remember the US friend I told you about at the beginning of this chapter? Well, he later came down to Lagos, and we spent a night together in a hotel at Ikeja. Upon our discussion, I discovered that he's not broke because he didn't have money. He's broke because he didn't know how to invest his money. So if you actually want to be rich as an employee, you'll not only need the luck to get a good job, you'll also need to learn how to invest your money so that other people or corporations can make your money work for you. If the last few paragraphs of this book are boring for you to read, they are boring for me to write too, so we're in the same prison. Conclusion. I don't know how you want to interpret this chapter, but my message here is clear: I've not seen any single rich person who works and earns his living with his two hands, and I've not seen any poor person who has 10 people working for him, so I conclude that the best way to be rich is to figure out how to work with 100 or more hands. There are two ways you can do this. You can do this as an employee, by improving your skills, get some luck to have high-paying jobs, and invest with startups or companies that make your money work for you. But this is what I've never done, because I've spent almost all my adult life as an entrepreneur, so I might not be able to teach you how to do this. The second path is what I know well, because that's what I've learned and done, and that's how to build a successful business. I've learned and done this almost all my adult life, and I can share my experience and wisdom with you, which is what I've been doing all through this book at the ABU and on my YouTube channel. P.S. It will be funny to me if I could find out that you've not shared this book with 100 people, and I will probably not like you if you've not shared this book with 10 people, because that means you are stingy. Who in the world keeps to himself what he gets for free? If I can love you so much to give you this book for free, why won't you love at least 10 other people enough to share it with them? Thanks. Let's continue with the book. Section 3. The Weak Enemies. Some of the things you perceive to be obstacles on your way to wealth are what I called weak enemies. You can crush them and win. Chapter 9. How to become rich without the government's help. One day when I was in secondary school, in one of the subjects, probably social studies, we were taught the duties of the government. According to the textbook and my teacher, the government has to provide jobs for its citizens. The government must secure its citizens, and the government also has to provide all the social amenities. For whatever reason, I was happy to hear that the government was to be responsible for my entire life, give me a job, secure me and provide for all the social amenities I need. What else do I have to worry about? However, as I grew up and observed the governments all over the world, I noticed one pathetic truth, and that is, politicians can never solve your problems. I was living in the village in the year 1998 when the dictator ruling my country died. Everyone celebrated his death just as if that would be the end of their poverty. That was 23 years ago, and ever since then, my people always celebrate whenever a new president is elected, hoping that the new president will be the messiah they need to become rich and successful. Somehow, the school system and society had succeeded in making us expect too much from the political leaders. Because of these high expectations, we often think that we don't have the power of our own to achieve our dreams. Don't get me wrong here, the government has responsibilities in your life, but guess what? Your life is too precious for you to waste it, waiting for the government to help you out because they won't. The other thing most people usually don't realize is that an average human is 10 times more powerful than he thinks, powerful enough to create his own life without the help of the government. Over the years, a lot of people have complained to me, I did not start a business because the government isn't giving loan. You can't start a business when the government cannot even provide electricity. You can't run a successful business in my country because of the bad policies of the government. You can't succeed in business in my country because of multiple taxations. I have only two things to tell you. First, I did it. I built a company from almost 0 naira to millions of naira in monthly profit, and I am not in any way lucky. I spent all my childhood suffering from rheumatism. My parents were poor farmers and tailor, and I had to spend the first decade of my life in the village. Nobody in my family ever gave me 50,000 naira to start a business. There wasn't anything in my background or childhood that suggested I might even be an average person, not to talk of being among the top 1%. In fact, one of the advice my brother had for me in the year 2008 when I told him I wanted to be an entrepreneur was, "Why do you think you can build a successful business when our parents are poor?" Because he believed that if your parents are poor, there is no way you are going to get money to start or make a business successful, especially in a country like Nigeria. But I didn't care. This leads me to my second point: when the battle is essential, the weapon will be created. A few months ago, I read the history of the Biafra War, the bloody Nigerian Civil War of 1967–80, and there's something that inspired me about the Igbo people of Nigeria. It happened that according to the accounts I read, these guys invented/created some unbelievable weapons during the war, which made Europeans have a rethink of what they thought about Africans. These people didn't create those weapons because someone helped them. They did it because their lives depended on it. Necessity, they say, is the mother of all inventions. When I decided to build a successful company, I wasn't doing it because the government of my country helped me. I was determined to do it because it was a matter of life and death to me. If I couldn't build a successful company of my own, I often told myself, I cannot live. The only reason why people love to make excuses about the government not helping them is that what they want to achieve is not that important to them. If what you want to achieve is so important as the oxygen you're breathing, you'll suddenly forget how irresponsible the government is. That's the spirit of 3%. The 3% of Africans who will create jobs for the rest of Africans won't wait, murmur, or complain about what the government didn't provide. Instead, these people will, like the Igbos during the Civil War, sacrifice whatever they have to create their dream life. Someone will then tell me, but it's not easy. Then let me answer you, why do you want it to be easy? Yes, my entrepreneurial journey would have probably been more comfortable if the government of my country was responsible. I probably would have been successful earlier than I did if most people in the political class weren't thieves and criminals, but think about this, it's a waste of time to focus on what you don't have the power to change. Till today, I have friends who still complain and make excuses about the government being the reason for their poverty. How exactly does that make a difference in their lives? I don't know how people think, but this is how I think. It's a waste of time to complain or make excuses about what I don't have the power to change, just as I don't have any ability to change what the president of my country would do. So, here is the message of this chapter: if you want to be among the 3% of Africans who will create companies that will employ the rest of Africans, you'll have to focus your life on what you can change, which is you. Yes, you probably have corrupt political leaders in your country. The government perhaps won't help you in any way. Still, the mission to rescue Africa from unemployment and to make yourself financially free is as important as the oxygen you breathe. Conclusion. Think about this. If the oxygen you need to stay alive is far away in the desert and the government that ought to help you bring it home didn't, would you instead fold your arms, complain and make excuses till you die, or get on the road and be determined to get your oxygen, no matter what? The 3% of people we need to rescue this vast continent from poverty won't complain of having no government's support. They will instead focus on how to use every of their ingenuity, imagination, and creativity to create businesses that can employ others and make them rich in return. This, of course, won't be easy, and I'm proud of myself for being very blunt with you. Just as I teach my students at the ABU, the mission to build a company is like the mission to fight against the enemy of your country. It's difficult, and nobody likes to do it, but those who are courageous enough to do it become heroes. Entrepreneurship is super difficult. Only a few people can do it, but those who are willing to do it might end up experiencing in their lifetime what 99% of humans can never experience: too much money, absolute freedom to do whatever you want, never having to fear a boss or run to a job you hate, and giving employment to other humans so they can live. I don't know many things in life that are as worthwhile as what I listed above, and if you're among the 3% who have what it takes to be entrepreneurs, I don't know why you won't want to sacrifice anything under the law of God to do it. Chapter 10. You can be a successful entrepreneur, but around the year 2005/6, one of my friends saw me with a financial book and said to me, "Steve, you see, most of the things written in this book can only work in the US and UK. Things are not working in Nigeria." I hated that statement, so I disagreed strongly with him by telling him that I was going to follow all the principles I was learning, and they would work for me. About 12 years after this conversation, my friend noticed my progress and decided to visit me in Lagos. This time, I had a growing business, a few employees, and a little more money than most people. My friend was surprised at how far I had gone, even though I knew I was just starting. One evening during his stay, we decided to take a walk. Then I told him what I think should be the dream of many Nigerians. I said, if you want to live a good life in this country, your goal should be to figure out how to make ₦1,000,000 every month, because you really have to stop worrying about bills, and you would want to take care of other people around you and then invest for the future. My friend, just as he did 12 years earlier, told me, that is going to be difficult in this country, which is a better way of saying it's not possible. Less than 3 years after this conversation, I had more than quadrupled my business, and I was making 3 times the money than my friend said wasn't possible. In contrast, my friend didn't even have any stable income. Here is the thing: people almost always get what they believe is possible in life. If you think you can, and look for riches with zeal and faith in God and yourself, you'll get it. If you conclude, like most people, that Africa is poor, wretched, and hopeless, you're already poor and lost. That's why Henry Ford said, if you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. You can become a successful entrepreneur, but if you don't believe that you can, not even God can help you. How society and school program you to fail. I logged into social media one day and saw the picture of my brother's kids. One wore a doctor's clothes with a stethoscope while the other wore a lawyer's clothes with a wig. When I saw this picture, I was a little angry. Don't mind me, I get mad for almost everything in our society. I wasn't mad because my brother was programming his children to become lawyers and doctors. I was mad because nobody programs their kids to become entrepreneurs. Later on, I visited my brother and decided to engage his oldest child, not the ones in the picture I saw. I asked this 13-year-old girl, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" To which she answered, "I want to be a doctor." I wasn't surprised because I knew that society and her parents had programmed her for wanting to be a doctor. This is what happens. When you have a 7-year-old child who doesn't want to do her homework, and you tell her, "Rachel, you need to do your homework because if you don't do well in school, you won't be able to become a lawyer," or like my brother, you sew doctor clothes, put it on your child and take a photograph of him, or while in the bank, you tell your child, "Look at the bankers. They are rich people," or any version of these lines, what you're doing is programming those children to become specific individuals. While it is not a crime, what makes me angry is that nobody is programming their children to be entrepreneurs. First, let me make it clear that children are not supposed to be given dreams. Parents and society are supposed to help children discover who they are instead of influencing who they want the children to become, but let's pretend for a moment that it's refreshing to influence your children's dream. Why is it that you will never hear a parent telling his child, "Look at Dangote. He's the richest man in Africa. If you work hard, you can become a successful entrepreneur too"? Why is it that no parent sells entrepreneurship to their children? Why does every parent want their children to be lawyers, doctors, and engineers? We were told often by our parents and teachers that the best way to live is to become a banker or an oil company worker, or doctor, or lawyer. Not our parents alone. The movies, the music, the television, all work against us to set our minds on what they assume is the best, being an employee. As a result of this massive programming, we grew up with low self-esteem about entrepreneurship. We believe that we cannot become entrepreneurs simply because society, school, and our parents have made us believe that. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Man often becomes what he believes himself to be." We believe we're supposed to be employees, and that's what we all want to be. Have you ever seen a man telling his child, "My son, as you are growing up, the best you can do with your life is to become an entrepreneur"? You can. Dangote did it. Can you do it? Then, you're wondering why millions of people are unemployed in Africa? How is that the work of the devil? How are children supposed to dream of becoming entrepreneurs when the society, school, parents, and movies they watch brainwashed them to become employees? How are the young adults ever going to believe in themselves, that they can build thriving companies, even though it's difficult, when everyone has programmed their kids to be lawyers and doctors? This, my friend, is what I have to tell you. If you think you can, you will. Karen Marie said, "It's what you choose to believe that makes you the person you are." Conclusion. I can repeat my personal story a million times, but I won't like to waste your time. Listen. I believe in the grace of God, but I had no advantage when I started in life. My parents were poor. I spent my first decade in a dark village, Oyo, Isla Orangun, Asun State. I suffered rheumatism throughout my childhood as a sickler. I didn't attend the right school because my parents couldn't afford them. I had nothing except that at some point in my life, I decided to believe in myself, and that is the only difference between most Africans who are poor today and me. If you have the feeling that you're among the 3% of Africans we need to build companies that will provide jobs for the rest of Africans and also become rich in the process, yes, it won't be easy for you and you might have to sacrifice a lot. But, you have what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur if you think you do. Chapter 11. How to say no to the societal dreams. About 14 years ago, When I was at the Asan State's Polytechnic, I met Kemi, a brilliant and intelligent lady, and we became friends. She was actually my girlfriend before I became born again. Kemi had a brother named Deo, who is now a medical doctor. No. Mr. Deo didn't become a medical doctor because he loved to be, at least from my assessment, according to the story Kemi told me. Here is what happened. Deo's father, as a child, wanted to become a medical doctor. He studied hard and went to university. But because of financial difficulty, he wasn't able to finish his medical course, so he couldn't become a doctor. When he had a son, like most parents, he probably started nursing the son to become who he wanted to become. This happens all the time. My father didn't go to school, so he believed that I should get a PhD, that will make him feel better. When people lost a dream in their youth, that dream never really goes away. Each time they see people who achieved that dream of theirs, they envy them and look for ways to see that dream again in their lifetime. There's no better way to reach your lost goal other than to make your child achieve them. That seems pretty straightforward, right? Unfortunately, one of the most considerable harms your parents can do to you, unknowingly, is to influence you to follow their dreams, either their childhood dreams or the goal they believe is better for you. When I decided to be an entrepreneur, my mother was worried. I'm sure she cried many nights. My father was angry and didn't want to see me. My only brother threatened to disown me, and even disowned me with his mouth. Everybody else in my large family either talked at my back or waited to see if I'd destroy my life by such a decision. Don't make a mistake here. All of these people love me. My mother is by far the best human being God created. She sacrificed her life for me to live. While my father couldn't have ranked among the best fathers in the world, he would probably score a D. My only brother was my childhood guidance. I lived a decent and hard-working life because he gave me direction. So, I did not doubt that my family members loved me. But when it came to my internal conviction about who I am and what I wanted for my life, I knew I would rather be happy for the rest of my life than to make my parents happy by fulfilling their dreams. Luckily for me, after I started succeeding, my beloved family members and I forgot the past, and we became a loving family again. Today, though I didn't pursue my parents' dreams, they are happy because I've done with my life what only a few people in the history of the world ever did. My advice for young people is this: don't allow your parents to kill your dream because of their own lost dreams. I know the above statement is harmful to the distribution of this book because when this book was first published in the year 2013, many parents told me that they shared it with their children. Now that I'm kicking your children against you, I know you won't want to give this book to your children. But I'm not kicking your children against you. I'm only telling the truth. Your children shouldn't live their lives pursuing your lost dreams. They should discover and pursue their dreams because that's the only way they can be happy and prosperous. Now to the children, I'm not teaching you to disrespect your parents. Even though my parents and I had over 7 years of darkness in our relationship, I never disrespected them. I listened to their advice but humbly let them know that who I am cannot be happy doing what they wanted me to do. As Africans, our parents are next to God. We have to honor and respect them. At the same time, we owe ourselves the higher duty of letting them know that we believe in our dreams and are willing to sacrifice our sweat to achieve them. Conclusion. Society will not only try hard to program you to become an employee, but your parents will also help that programming, so watch out. If you're a parent reading this book and you hate me because of this chapter, the only way we can settle our dispute is for you to meet me at the African Business University, so I'll be expecting you to register. Chapter 12. Why you don't need money to start a business. On Thursday, 24th of July, 2008, I announced to my parents that I would be leaving home to start a business. I only had 8,500 naira to my name. Not only that I didn't have money, but I also did not even have any good business ideas. I left my hometown, Asan State, and traveled to Ogbomoso, Oyo State, Nigeria. I stopped over at Ibadan to buy a Glow Business SIM which I intended to use in starting a call center business. Those days many people didn't call with their phones because it was cheaper to call from the call center, so I wanted to start a call center business. After buying the phone, SIM, and paying for my transportation, I got to my friend's house in Ogbomoso with about 500 naira. To add salt to my injury, just in 2-3 days of working on my call center business idea, I discovered that I couldn't make it work because I made no money, so the business failed. There I was, just a few days after starting fully in the business world. I had no money, could not go back home, and had lost my first business. Fast forward to 8 years later, I had my first breakthrough in business, finally got a successful business, and my life has never remained the same again. Yes, it was tough, but so many people do it every day. And just for you to know what I mean when I say that you don't need money to start a business, what I mean is this: you don't need your own money to start a business, and you don't have to be born by rich parents either. My family is so poor that 10,000 naira, less than $30, is the most significant money anybody in my family ever gave me for business purposes. But with the right mindsets, business education, and persistence, I was able to get all the resources I need for my businesses from other people, including strangers. Today I hear a lot of people saying that the reason why they can't start a business is that they don't have money. When I know better, I know that they don't know what they are talking about. While the comprehensive teaching about how to get all of the capital you need for a business is beyond the scope of this book, you can be sure you will find them in my other books, especially at the ABU. Let's continue with the book. Side note: if you want to have access to tens of my free video training and courses, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Chapter 13. Built on Deception, Run on Lies. My country, Nigeria, has a program called the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC. It's a one-year time-wasting activity you have to go through after you've wasted like 18 to 22 previous years of your life in schools. To make this program seem worthwhile, the Nigerian federal government spends about 2 to 3 weeks to teach their victims, the graduating students, how to be self-employed. In one such event in 2011 or so, I heard the governor of my state advising the graduates, "You see, there's no job anywhere. Make sure you're self-employed." That is a bit of crazy advice, probably a stupid one. If our governors, presidents, and everyone who has a brain for that matter know that there's no job anywhere, why do we keep on brainwashing our children to love jobs? I just don't know the name to call this. Are we all stupid, idiots, or imbeciles who derive joy in destroying the lives of our children? Why would anyone waste 20 most important years of someone's life teaching them how to be employees, only for the same person to be told, "We're sorry, there's no job"? Another great deception is what school does by offering entrepreneurship courses. The first time I got mad about this was around the year 2011. I was at Offa, Kwara State, Nigeria, and I wanted to recruit a few people for a business idea I had. One of the applicants claimed to have a master's degree in business administration. So, I paused and thought about it. Why should you need a job if you went to school to study business? Many years after that, I interviewed a lady who claimed to study entrepreneurship in university. What the heck is going on here? How can you need a job if you went to school to study entrepreneurship? It is like saying, "You see, I spent 4 years in driving school, but I'll need you to drive my car to the grocery store because I can't drive." But I know what is going on here. You see, the school was built on deception, and it has to continue its devil-given task with more tricks. There's no way anyone can give what he doesn't have. There are no way school teachers or lecturers can teach you how to be an entrepreneur, because if they know how to build a company, 99% of them will not be in the classroom. I mean, most employees hate their jobs, and almost every teacher hates their job. Who in the world won't hate killing children? So, you honestly believe that a man who doesn't know how to drive a car can teach you how to drive? Do you honestly believe that a man who doesn't know how to cook can show you how to cook? Do you honestly believe that a man who is an employee can teach our kids how to be entrepreneurs? If you think such, I don't. Every day I receive tons of messages and comments from people all over the world about how my teachings changed their lives and challenged them to start a business. The reason why my message makes an impact on people's lives is that I'm talking about what I know and do. I'm not teaching entrepreneurship because I read books about entrepreneurship. Even though I read a lot of books about entrepreneurship, I'm teaching entrepreneurship because it's my life, my passion, and the only thing I've ever done successfully with my life. So let me be very blunt with you, if you desire to learn entrepreneurship, the worst place to go to is the school, and the best place to go to is the African Business University. I started the African Business University in the year 2017 because I can't take it anymore. Even though I'm rich and happy in my personal life, I'm dying as I'm getting angry every day when I see, hear, or meet young people whose lives have been destroyed by school and society. At some point, my company carried out an online survey to get feedback from Africans about how they think about entrepreneurship and jobs, and when I sat down to study the mindsets of these people, I discovered that at least 70% of the people we surveyed reasoned like me. Most of them probably could build their own companies. But how can a bird fly when she was never taught how to lift her feather? How can young people build companies if they have been brainwashed all their lives by the school, society, and parents to love their job? Then, I told myself, if the whole world is stupid, I won't continue cooperating with them. If I have to be the only one who thinks everyone is stupid to teach people how to look for jobs which are not available, I'll risk being alone. I can't continue living if I'll see every kid being taught how to be an employee in a world where there's no job. Hence, we have to create our own institution to teach people what school will never teach them, and that is the reason why I created the African Business University, ABU. 3 things you should do before closing this book. Number 1. Share this book with 50 people. If for any reason you don't want to give this book to 50 people, then, make a list of 10 people you love most and get them to read this book immediately, today. I gave this book out for free because I love you. Why would keep to yourself what someone give you for free? It's easy to share this book, and it only takes about 3 minutes. Number 2. If you would like to get tens of my free video training and teachings, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Number 3. If you like to learn how to build a successful business from scratch, join the African Business University. I started the African Business University in the year 2017 because I want to build an institution that teaches something different from what school is teaching. To me, it's stupid to teach people how to be employees in the world where there's no meaningful jobs. The good news is that, I do not intend to make profit from the African Business University. You can choose between the paid scheme and the scholarship scheme. If you choose paid scheme, yes, your money is coming to my bank account, but if you choose the scholarship scheme, you're not paying the school fee. I love you.